The UPSC CSE arena is an ever-evolving space where staying up to date becomes as crucial as maintaining a thorough preparation. With strategic planning and holistic coverage for exam syllabus, Vision IS Delhi presents GS Foundation course, avail analysis and integration of current affairs with GS syllabus. All India test series with an innovative assessment system, inculcating post-test analysis, discussion, all India ranking, and more. Explore the holistic learning modules intrinsically designed for the ideal aspirant.
Good evening, class. So how many of you have an idea about the exam? Like, what is your stage of preparation? Classes किन लोगों की हो चुकी हैं? So you're done with economics classes? And how many are still ongoing? And those who have no idea? Not studied, okay. So first of all, what exactly is the reason for doing previous year questions? First we'll set the expectation, right? Then only we'll start. What's the reason for doing previous year question analysis? Anyone? Understand scope, okay. Anything else? Okay. What's the reason for doing this? To know pattern of the questions. Pattern in terms of trends, okay. Anything else? So if you're reading economics for UPSC, where do you start? So you said pattern or trend, let us know what exactly is the scope of the question, कि पढ़ना कितना है, right? So when you start the subject, any particular subject for UPSC preparation, where do you start? Syllabus. So do we have a syllabus? For prelims, do we have a syllabus? Is syllabus indicative of what the questions are being asked? Then what exactly do we do? अगर syllabus नहीं है तो how do you start? There is no particular book which is written or UPSC recommends read this book and the questions will be from this book. Then how do you start reading anything? This is why PYQs. There are two things which we need to understand. The reason for doing PYQ is that one, PYQ will help us first analyze what exactly has to be read. The topics that have to be covered, this is the first thing which you need to know comes from the previous year analysis. Whether it is economics or any other subject, because the syllabus of prelims is not at all detailed and is not in line with what the questions are being asked, syllabus is of no use. So how do we know what to read? We need to overview the whole 10-15 years since the syllabus changed after 2011 to know what exactly is the topics which we have to cover for any particular subject. Any particular subject, not just economics. So the first thing which is being answered here is, from the past 10 years, we have a list of topics which tell us what exactly to read. So if you have a brief idea about the exam, this exam is not a source-based exam. You don't have one or two books from where the questions will be asked. This is more an application-based exam because your both understanding and analysis is being checked. whether it is prelims and mains. The mains part is not difficult here because the mains, they have given a detailed syllabus. You don't have to figure what exactly to be read because the syllabus for mains GS 1 to 4 is highly detailed in nature. So that question with respect to previous year does not stand because we already know what has to be read. Here we need to first figure out what has to be read. Once you have figured this out, what to read, then only you can figure out a source to read. It's not the other way around that we'll have a source first and then we'll decide what to read. So if you have been recommended any book by anyone, you would not know what to read in that book and how much of that book is important until and unless you know what exactly is the domain of the paper. And this is what makes the prelims part slightly more challenging as compared to mains. Mains ka challenge is that you have just one question and you have to write things there. Prelims ka challenge is this becomes difficult to catch. This is the both exams have different challenges. The topic to be read and what exactly is the scope of the topic, that is how much to read. This becomes slightly difficult to predict. Mains challenges, it is you have to write. You just have one question given and you have to fill 2 or 3 pages. Prelims mein the question is, the answer is in front of you. Just have to pick the right answer. But the question domain could be vast because getting the topic and then knowing how much to read from the topic, this can be slightly challenging. So the first thing which you need to do before starting anything is to know what exactly are the questions being asked. So we have to answer or focus on 2 things. First, draw the boundary, and then within the boundary, what is the depth which you have to go in. What to read, the topics, and how much to read, the scope of the topic, because all of these topics might have significant amount of dimensions. But UPSC has a certain pattern, we need to understand that pattern. That said, if you do the analysis, you'll have these 2 things. While doing the analysis, you might not have the answer. The answer to any particular question will only come when you have the understanding and also you have the application part. ऐसा नहीं है book में से देख के you will find out the answer. A lot of questions are application based where you learn something and then learn how to do the question. So right now what the idea of doing the analysis is that you need to capture these 2. You might not know the answer because you have not read the concepts. Knowing the answer would happen after you have read the concept. So first, you draw the boundary of the subject, get these 2. Write down the topics. For example, in these 2 classes, we'll do this only. The second is you prepare the topic comprehensively from n number of sources which can cover all of this. It's not limited to just one source. There can be multiple sources also. Once you have done it, you come back to the previous year questions again and now try to solve them. So the first thing was try to know what to read. The second was read that particular thing from multiple sources. And the third is now try to solve the question. Check whether you have understood the concept or not. So the first stage of analysis of previous year is not to know the answer. Do not get confused or anxious with how difficult the question is. That is not the problem because we have not yet prepared the subject. The first thing to be understood is just capture these 2. And going over the last 10 years, we've already done this analysis number of times. What we've come to know, the topics what we have to read is broadly covered in 2 domains. One part of the topic is macroeconomics. What UPSC is trying to check from the economics front is whether you are familiar with the broader economy and how it works. It is not talking about the technicalities or the models behind what exactly is happening. It's just checking the maximum understanding of class 12, that whether you have a understanding of what is GDP, what is inflation, what causes inflation, what is exchange rate. So all of these things which are being asked from macroeconomics front is just to check what exactly is happening around. If you see all of the subjects, this is what is the domain. In prelim specifically, the domain is understanding what is happening around. उस happening around की understanding पे analysis mains में है. So if you see the questions in prelims in history, you'll find that they're mostly factual questions talking about a lot of features. But the moment you turn to the mains part of history, you'll have analytical questions that compare the ideologies of these 2 while fighting for the freedom movement. Similarly, you have polity in paper 2. Polity, the basic part of it, the understanding that what exactly are features of the constitution. What do you mean by who decides between the governor and the the chief minister. But the moment you come to paper 2, they are more analytical, except the application based questions. Same happens with this here also. So understanding what is happening, knowing the terms and concepts, the meaning of them is what is required in prelims. But the moment we go into mains, you have an analysis part of it, why it is happening. So if you see the first question of GS3, they're asking what exactly was the social expenditure in India after 91, and how is it important for inclusive growth. But if you have a question in prelims, you can have what of the following, what are the reforms that happened in 91. So the domain is just asking you the basic understanding of the terms. Analysis part is mostly covered in mains. So the first part which is being covered here is macroeconomics, the basics of it, knowing the terms. How do we read? Now, once we have figured out that these are the topics, I'll go one by one in each of the topics and explain whatever we are doing here. Once we know it is macroeconomics and term-based question are asked, terms or how they are operationalized in the economy. Operational part jo hai inka, for example, if interest rates increase, what will happen to exchange rate? If money goes out, what will happen to the economy? What are the factors for demand pull inflation? तो एक तो उनका मीनिंग पता होना चाहिए, and दूसरा how do they work in the economy. This is the broader domain of macroeconomics which they are asking in prelims. This is the scope of the question. And once we have delivered on the topics that this is the topics they are going to ask, how do we cover these topics? There is one particular NCERT of class 12 which goes by the name of Introductory Macroeconomics. There are roughly 6 chapters in it. Each and every chapter is where the questions are going to come from. 2 parts of the paper in prelims. One half of the paper is macroeconomics, the other half of the paper is Indian economy. So one half, what they ask is what exactly is happening around in the broader economy, the meaning of the terms, and also how those terms are operationalized in the economy. What do we mean by operational? They're going to ask what exactly is the cause of something or effect of something. Like if inflation happens, who will control inflation? This is effect or trying to control. What are the factors that can cause inflation? If there is particular growth in the economy, but life of people is not improving, what do you think is happening? So what exactly is the cause or what exactly is the impact of it? This is the scope of the question, meaning of the terms and cause and effect. And what is the primary source for reading this? Is your class 12th NCERT. 6 to 8 questions are roughly covered under these topics. And what is good about this is, these are high mark scoring area. Why? Because you only need understanding. You don't have to rote memorize anything कि governor था या president था या parliament था. Once you understand inflation happens like this, once you understand the meaning of GDP, you don't have to go over it again and again. Only the understanding part is what is going to help you solve the 6 to 8 questions. And every year, these 6 to 8 questions end up on the easy and medium side. They're not very difficult technical questions. Easy and medium, you understand, you don't have to revise, you just have to practice. So the focus in macroeconomics is just understand the concept. You don't have to learn anything. A lot of sections in the prelims, different subjects have a factual portion, which is the learning part, which becomes difficult because you have to learn too many things at the same time. This becomes the easy area to score on, because once you understand 1 plus 2 is 3, you don't have to again and again know 1 plus 2 is 3. वो एक ही बार समझ आ गया तो उससे आपका क्वेश्चन सॉल्व हो जाएगा. So roughly, if you have 8 questions, 16 marks. 90 cutoff, 95 के cutoff में 16 marks if you can secure, that would make your life easier in other sections. Rest 8 questions are also going to give you some benefits, but this 8 is something which you have to secure. इतना आसान portion किसी subject में नहीं है. You'll not find any conceptual part which is being tested, and where we can short get the marks without any confusion. So a lot of questions in different areas, you have confusion what the UPSC will give the answer. Here you don't have that confusion because it's highly basic in nature. So this is a short 100% guarantee 16 marks which you're going to get. You have 10 questions, you have 16 to 20 marks coming from this section. But the focus should be on understanding, doing it from class 12th NCERT, and also if you are getting support coaching है तो वो उसमें भी same चीज होगी. NCERT is much easier to understand once you do it in the class. Now this is one part of the paper. The second part we'll discuss each and every part of macroeconomics, whether it is GDP, money including monetary policy, inflation, the banking system. So if you see macroeconomics में 4 broader parts हैं. One is national income accounting, which talks about how to measure growth. The all concepts related to GDP development. For example, has anyone read the newspaper today? Indian Express? Do people read Indian Express? Ideally, you should read both. I'll tell you why newspaper has become important. If I start asking question in 2011 from topics which I don't change, I can't change the topic. If I change the topic, nobody will be able to prepare. So if I start from 2011 and this is year 2025, over 15 years, I have exhausted a number of questions. I can't repeat the question and a number of questions I've already covered. How will I frame new questions? There is only two ways of framing new questions. One, I make the language difficult and also make the options difficult. All statements are correct. Two statements are correct. यही हो सकता है अगर टॉपिक वही करना है. Or I ask from the dynamic area something that is happening around you from the newspaper. If my basic questions NCERT gets covered word by word and I don't want to repeat, either I'll make the language of the question very difficult, which becomes in a shorter period of time, it becomes difficult to understand. This is what they did with the options. Last year, before that they had given a trailer, we'll do this. Last year they did that. Also introduce the assertion reasoning type questions. You see, they're playing in how to frame the question, they're not changing the topic. Or I ask from what is happening around coming from the newspaper. The more you read, the more probability is that you'll solve the question. The less you read and you think that compilations are going to help, that is not going to happen. This is why reading two newspapers become very important for solving questions here. You don't have to learn anything, you just need to know if there is a new term that has come in the exam. For example, there's a term beta used in finance. What do you understand by beta? अब बीटा आपको कोई बुक में से नहीं पढ़ा सकता फाइनेंशियल मार्केट में. इफ यू रीडिंग द न्यूज़पेपर यू विल फाइंड a lot of references to alpha beta, number of different variables in financial market. So if you use it in daily parlance, your question solving becomes very easy. You're not reading it, you're dependent on that book, then it becomes difficult because it's problem for the question setter also. यही आपको बाकी factual चीज़ों में दिखेगा, even in history, even in environment. They've already exhausted a number of themes. They can't make a new question. This is why they're going into certain areas which requires more reading. Difficulty part is not that, because first, it's a qualifying exam. There's no absolute marking. And secondly, answer is in front. Nobody's asking you to write something. The answer is written in front of you. Just have to pick the right answer. So if you have read it extensively, you'll be able to eliminate or work around the options. Exact answer nahi zaruri hai har jagah mile. You will have to work around the options within the exam, which we learn. I'll show you how it is done by seeing the questions. Now today's newspaper, what was the main editorial in the Indian Express? जो editorial side के 3 हैं और एक main opinion है. Has anyone read that? What was it about? Food waste. उसके ऊपर वाला. It's written about development and measurement of development, how development measurement is very difficult. That is a topic which relates to national income accounting. They talked about number of variables which can measure development. This is what we do in this topic. So we know how we measure growth. How growth of a particular nation is measured? We have the indicator that is GDP. This is what you learn from the class 12th NCERT. But now growth and development, we move beyond growth, we move to development. Development has multiple indicators prepared by multiple agencies, which UPSC over the years has asked multiple times. Now this question is directly lifted from the newspaper, but the topic was already there. This is how the question becomes dynamic, because I've already exhausted questions on GDP. This is why newspaper reading becomes very important in the part which is mostly considered as static. Then the other part is mostly related to money, this plus external sector. How exactly exchange rates are managed. These two portions are where the maximum questions come in. Sometimes they have picked questions from national income accounting, but every year they have picked questions from money and they have picked questions from external sectors. These two become the most important part in the prelims part, macroeconomics. Then you have another, which is fiscal policy and government budgeting. That is the role of government. What exactly is the government doing in the economy? What are its policies on taxation? What are its policies on expenditure? Now, you understand the basic ke fiscal deficit hota kya hai. You know what are various tax sources, where does the government spend the money. But also it has a dynamic part. What was the government doing in this year? This is where the role comes in of the budget. Performance of the government in 1 year, role comes of the economic survey. So I will have to expand my horizon with respect to source because my topic is demanding so. If you see, from the topics I'm deriving the sources, I'm not doing the other way around, that the sources are telling me what exactly to do. The topics are telling me what exactly the domain is. If there is a topic of fiscal policy and government budgeting, any government development with respect to expenditure, whether it is center-state relation, whether it is any particular scheme where the government has spent money, any particular institution the government has established, all become important for my एग्जाम. द बेसिक्स डेफिनेटली आई हैव टू डू, वो तो आएंगे ही, बट उसके ऊपर एक एप्लीकेशन बेस्ड क्वेश्चन इन दी इकोनॉमी ऑल्सो दे कैन आस्क. Then an important sector which usually they don't cover the sector separately, but this sector has been the favorite for UPSC in the last few years, that is the banking sector. Now, Indian banking system was facing significant issues in 2015. 15 to 20, NPA का बहुत problem था इंडिया में. So whatever happened with respect to NPA turned up in the exam. I'll show you how number of questions have a background in the NPA problem. But after 2020, the NPA problem has almost been solved. So in the last 3 to 4 years, you don't find questions on banking. What happened? 15 to 20 NPA based question आए. 18 में one of the banks faced a problem where people started withdrawing money. That was the Punjab Maharashtra Cooperative Bank. Government changed certain regulations on cooperatives. 21 and 22, these 2 years, there were only 2 questions in banking that were from urban cooperatives. If you see, sare banking ke question coming from current development. After 22, there's no such recent development that has happened in banking. So what they've done is, previously definitely they've asked questions here, but now they have shifted big time on financial market. You'll see number of questions in 2022, 23, 24 coming from the capital market, the stock markets. Terms in stock market, institutions in stock market, various instruments of stock market. So they have moved from this to this because now they have, this is no longer in news. For example, right now we have significant issues regarding SEBI, corporate governance. So you can definitely expect a question around SEBI. You might not have a direct question with respect to whatever inside trading or whatever happened there, but SEBI as an institution pe question aa sakta hai, when was it established? Who's the appellate authority for SEBI? Who appoints the chairman for SEBI? This is how they move beyond the topic, but static they already told you. But any present development, wahan se question aayega. I'll show you how banking se and payments ecosystem se, because there were number of payment ecosystem based development. UPI pe they asked multiple questions. All of those questions because they had current developments. So one particular sector in macroeconomics which they ask is banking and financial market. So I have growth, I have money, external sector, government, and one sector, that is banking and financial market. 1-to-1 mapping है class 12th NCERT से. एक chapter है class 12th NCERT. The first chapter is growth and in the development, national income accounting. Second chapter is money and banking. Third chapter is external sector. Fourth is fiscal policy. All the chapters are very important from the exam point of view, setting the base so that you can apply your mind when you read the newspaper. Newspaper is from where you can get the maximum questions. Is this clear? Now this is 6 to 8 marks or 6 to 8 questions. The next 6 to 8 questions are specific to your syllabus of mains. Whatever is written in the main syllabus also has certain components where you can ask questions for prelims. Though they are mostly analytical, but definitely they can ask the basic. For example, they have a question with respect to direct and indirect subsidy in mains. They have a question with respect to MSP और PDS system. अब MSP होता क्या है या MSP की crops कौन सी, वो तो prelims में पूछ ही सकता है. So whatever your syllabus of mains is, all of those topics have to be covered from the prelims perspective also. You have number of questions from that and also all of those topics. So it is agriculture, industries, infrastructure, and mobilization of resources. You have certain 91 reforms, whatever happened in the economy. So all of these application based questions, you're going to have 6 to 8. 2015 to 20, UPSC asked number of questions from economics, upwards of 20 tha, 20-25. In the last 4 years, they have made it to 15 to 16 questions, where half of the paper is macroeconomics and half of the paper is Indian economy. In the Indian economy part, they stick to 2 major things. One, you should know the performance of the sectors in India. Tax to GDP is increasing, decreasing, fiscal deficit is increasing in the last 10 years, growth is positive, real GDP was increasing, decreasing. Trend-based question with respect to performance of the Indian economy. Once you know the performance, though this performance और इसका जो analysis part है, this analysis is specific to mains. But this, once you understand the performance, for example, agriculture has a problem of too many farmers and less income. Then how exactly is the government helping the farmers? So once you know the performance, you also need to know what exactly is the solution which the government is giving based on the performance. Solution is nothing but policies and the institutions which are implementing these schemes or policies. These are the two types of questions which they ask from Indian economy. So either they draw the performance mein you should know what exactly is the sector like, features kya hai, and what exactly is happening. The second type of question is, what is the solution if this is the performance? Solution is mostly your schemes and policies. Number of schemes are being asked, 2 statement, 3 statement, or even direct questions in ABCD format. Institutions which are implementing those schemes can also be asked. So if we have this year, mains question was, why do you think food inflation is persistent in India? अब वो prelims में question क्या आएगा? Who measures food inflation? Or how exactly inflation is measured? Who gives the index of inflation in India? What is the base here? So वो आपका basic performance है. उसका analysis वो mains में पूछेंगे. But performance, basic trends, and the solution. 6 to 8 questions here. This is what requires some extensive reading beyond what we did in class 12. Iska class 12 macroeconomics and Indian economic development is not going to help. This is where both of them, the most important sources, newspaper and the economic survey. And if you need to know the basics of the working of these sectors, if you don't have any background, you can read those specific chapters from the India Yearbook. India Yearbook gives the ministry the various schemes which the government is implementing, and you'll find number of questions coming from schemes and institutions from the India Yearbook. Trend-based questions are mostly coming from survey. Newspaper though all year round is going to cover all of this. But most likely the question is going to turn up from the yearbook, which every year tells the schemes which the government is implementing and also talks about number of institutions. This is, you'll find a high scoring area जहाँ से इसमें से question मिलते हैं. Otherwise, you would require multiple significant reading. You'll have to expand your reading. This is why covering 2 to 3 newspapers is must here. Both the Hindu and the Indian Express, if you're reading on a continuous basis for 1 year, you'll be able to solve number of questions. Again, do not expect direct questions coming. You learn things in the newspaper. Based on your learning, you apply knowledge and solve questions. In UPSC, it's very difficult to find questions directly from the source. It will never happen, whether in prelims or mains. You can only learn things. Based on the learning, you can apply your knowledge. The more you read, the more your knowledge base improves, more equipped you are to solve the question. Better here in prelims, why this strategy works? Because this exam, the marks don't add. So you just have to use your knowledge to solve it. वो बताना नहीं है किसी को कैसे हुआ. You just solved it. You cleared the cutoff. Cutoff was 86. You got 87. That's it. You don't have to score 150 there. Whatever maximum you have to score comes in mains, where you will go get both time and space to tell whatever you know. Reasoning अपनी logic वहाँ use करना. This is where you will get a rank. Here you just have to solve based on whatever extensively you've read. कहीं से भी पढ़ा है वो solve हो रहा है. That is my strategy. So if I'm solving number of test papers are giving me new information. This is good for me because before the exam I have 50 or 100 new facts which can help me solve question. Direct nahi aayega, but help me solve question in mains. This is the slightly trickier part. Is this clear? 2 things: macroeconomics, how the economy functions, how the economy works. It starts with knowing the terms and then application of those terms, how they are operationalized, the cause and effect. Second is Indian economy, understanding the Indian economy through its performance and its solution. 15 to 16 questions from economics. What to read, how much to read should be now clear. Is this okay? Now we start with the questions. You'll see how this works. Microeconomics also they've asked, but the priority is very less because in the last 15 years they've only asked 2 questions. So if you just know the basics of demand and supply, just the basics of microeconomics, you'll be able to solve that one question if it turns up. But priority is very less because in 15 years, only 2 questions have come. Across 2018 mein, I think on opportunity cost and 19 mein demand and supply. That's it. Two questions only. Most important source here is the newspaper. Once you understand the class 12th NCERT, most important is the newspaper. You'll understand from the questions itself. And most of the questions you'll find the easy and medium side. There's no difficult questions zyada hai nahi. You can't figure out what the answer is. The first is your national income accounting. Hindi year 2015, in fact, this is the most difficult question of the last 10 years. In fact, 15 se sabse mushkil question hi thoda ye tha. Talking about tax to GDP. You understand all what is a tax? It's the major revenue source for the government. And what is GDP? It's development. What is GDP? Huh? GDP is output produced in one particular territory in one particular time period. So the question is saying tax to GDP ratio is decreasing. So you can take an example. GDP, whatever total output we produced, the tax which we collected as percentage of GDP is decreasing. So in a particular year, just an example, we collected 11% tax as GDP. In the next year, we have collected 10%. Now, why can this happen? Or what is the reason behind it? Which of the following can be understood from decreasing tax? अगर ये हुआ है तो क्या indicate? What exactly is the indication out of this? Slowing economic growth rate or less equitable distribution of national income. Now, first is slowing economic growth rate. Can this be deduced from tax to GDP being reduced? Now, the first policy in which you don't have to fall in is that you don't have to relate के tax to GDP कम कैसे होगा. The first thing we'll try to understand here is या तो GDP बढ़ रहा है और tax नहीं बढ़ रहा, or both are decreasing. This is something, this logic will not work here. Why? Because tax and GDP both are related to each other. So your logic of numerator should decrease or denominator will decrease, then only the ratio will fall. This will not work here because both tax and GDP are related to each other. Numerator and denominator are related to each other. How are they related to each other? There's a concept called tax buoyancy. What do we understand by tax buoyancy, anyone? Tax buoyancy refers to if we do not change the tax rate, how much does the tax collected change from the previous year as percentage GDP changes. So if the tax rate does not change, how much of the tax collected will change when GDP will change? Mostly this number is somewhere between 0 to 1. Mostly. In the Indian case, this number lies between 0 to 1. That means if GDP is increasing by 1%, the tax is increasing between 0 to 1%. If GDP is increasing by 1%, the tax which might change, the percentage increase in tax is between 0 and 1. 1 से ज़्यादा ये figure होगी तो what did it mean? कि GDP 1% से बढ़ा, but tax 1% से ज़्यादा से बढ़ा है. This is what is the meaning of tax buoyancy, and in India mostly the tax buoyancy is between 0 to 1, that if it will increase by 1%, tax 1% से नहीं बढ़ता, 1% से कम से बढ़ता है. That means if GDP will change, will the tax amount also change in response to GDP? That means if my GDP is not changing, will I also see a slowdown in tax revenue? If my GDP is not changing, if my output does not increase, will my tax collected also decrease? If I relate it to tax buoyancy, ये नहीं change हुआ है, ये भी उसको reflect नहीं कर रहा है ढंग से. If that happens, that means this can be true. That means if GDP decreased, my tax collected also decreased and the ratio fell to 10%. That means this can be the case. A slowing GDP, I had a say GDP of 10,000. 10,000 में मैंने 1,000 was my tax collected. This is what is the 10% tax to GDP ratio. Next year, I am getting 9,000 as my total GDP. नाउ टैक्स बॉयंसी सेज कि रिफ्लेक्ट करेगा वो, बट 1% से कम करेगा, तो वो 1% से अगर कम हुआ है तो ये 1% से कम होगा. That means this ratio will fall. If this ratio will fall, that means this can be true when GDP falls, tax to GDP falls. If you understand the concepts of tax buoyancy, mostly it is between 0 and 1, you'll understand that if the GDP falls, tax collected will also fall. और वो ज़्यादा रेशो से फॉल करेगा बिकॉज वो उतने रेशो से बढ़ नहीं रहा था. दिस इज वाई इट डिपिक्ट्स अ स्लोइंग इकोनॉमिक ग्रोथ रेट. Yes, GDP has fallen, but the efficiency of tax collection increasing. That means your tax buoyancy has grown greater than 1. This is what you're saying कि percentage कम से fall हुआ है, but tax collection ज़्यादा है. But how probable is that case? That can happen. But does it negate this cannot happen? There can be three cases. One, when tax buoyancy is 0 to 1. One tax buoyancy is negative, and the other tax buoyancy is more than 1. What you're saying is if it is more than 1, then this might not be true. Then this might not, but the two cases this is true. When 0 to 1, it is tax buoyancy 0 to 1 or tax buoyancy is less than 0, then this is true. Then indicates which of the following necessarily is does not say. So in two particular cases, this is true. Definitely this necessarily doesn't mean this. Then you can make this incorrect. But otherwise this is correct. In two cases, you understand this becomes correct then. When it is between 0 and 1, when it is less than 0, this is true. But when it is more than 1, then it might not be true. But in two cases, this statement is correct. So it may indicate this. Is this clear? How exactly slowing growth rate? Now, second statement says less equitable distribution of national income. Now, when whatever we are estimating tax to GDP or have any information on tax, do we know who is paying those tax? Do we have the distribution part of the tax? That means any data on collection of tax. That means this is not indicating how much tax was collected from direct sources and how much tax was collected from indirect sources. So I don't have any idea about what was direct, what was indirect. So I can't comment on equitable or not equitable distribution of income. Because in economies, what happens is if tax is mostly collected from indirect sources, then you have less equitable distribution. उन पे tax burden ज़्यादा है. Direct sources means that you have more equitable because you are taking from rich and then distributing to poor. But I don't have any information from here that what is the percentage of direct or indirect. So I can't say anything about distribution. This statement will not be correct. Answer here is 1 only. So you can't do the just numerator denominator function here because these two terms are related. The concept is tax buoyancy. Simple ये नहीं है कि GDP बढ़ेगा और tax कम होगा. There are three cases that can happen. So in two cases, this less distribution of income or this growth rate being slowed down is true. Is this clear? Answer here is A. Mostly understanding based question, and if you know the concept of tax buoyancy. With reference to Indian economy, consider the following statements. The rate of growth of real GDP has steadily increased in the last decade. What do you understand by real GDP? What is real and nominal GDP? Real GDP is quantity of current year and price of constant year. The question is asking rate of growth. Rate of growth of this number has been steadily increasing. That means from year 2000, say 5 to 15, every year the ratios were positive. Consistently increasing percentage of growth. In the last decade, the question was in 15, so 5 to 15. Now, how do you solve this question if you don't have the facts? First of all, try to write the statement what it is saying so that it becomes clear to analyze the performance then. This is what they are asking, कि steadily increase हुआ है. How do you solve the question without knowing the numbers? Whenever there is a trend-based question, in this particular year, try to find a particular abnormal year. This is where the trend will break. The economy is consistently growing. It might be correct that it is steadily increasing. But there was a certain problematic here between 5 to 15. That was 2008 to 9 and even till 10 the continued problem. Now if 2008-9 we saw a recession, you might not have 7 to 8% growth. It might have gone from 7 to say 6.5. That means this steadily increased pattern would have broken in an abnormal year. This is how you solve the trend-based question. Whenever you have a particular time frame, you try to know if there is an abnormality in one of the years in which they asked a question. For example, if the question would have been asked in 2025 and the time frame would be 15 to 25, do we have an abnormal year here? Yes. 16 में demonetization, 2007 GST, then a pandemic which from 19 to 21. So you might not get this. So this statement would then be not correct. And we had 2008. You'll get it from the facts also. कि नहीं हुआ था ऐसा. But how to solve it in the exam without knowing the facts? Try to find the abnormality that has happened. The GDP at market price has steadily increased in the last decade. This was talking about growth percentages. This is talking about quantity into price. That means it is talking about the monetary value. Now, how do you then solve this? So if we had 10,000 GDP in 2005, what we are saying is every year the GDP has increased. Percentage growth nahi, but the nominal GDP, right? Now, how probable this statement is? Or when will this pattern break? Why is the question asking about inflation? ये pattern break कब होगा? When my growth percentage is negative. This pattern will break only when my growth percentage is negative. Did India get negative growth rate from 5 to 15? Or has India witnessed negative growth rate since independence? There have only been 3 or 4 instances in that years India got a negative growth rate. 1966-67, 1980. Then you again had negative growth rate in the pandemic. -2% was the growth rate. तो वहाँ पे आपका ये नंबर कम हो सकता है. And ऐसे instance पूरे 50 साल में 4 बार. 75 years you only have 4. It also happened in 48, but we don't count 48 because we assume that Indian economic history starts from 51 when elections were conducted. 51 के बाद से there have been only 3 events. That definitely did not happen between 5 and 15, but that definitely happened between. Then the statement would have been wrong. But here, if negative growth rate did not happen, this statement would be correct. Is it clear? Why this question seems to be tricky? Because one is talking about growth percentage, the other is talking about absolute numbers. So this is clearly incorrect, but you can't follow the same logic here. वो तभी हो सकता है जब नेगेटिव है. So definitely 7 to 6.5 आया होगा growth, but number terms में तो it has increased. Percentage is small, but still number wise it has increased. Therefore, this statement is correct. It has steadily increased, and numbers will show you that it steadily increased. This is why the answer here is. Is it clear? 2 things which we learned from this question is you need to understand the difference between growth percentage and nominal GDP. And second, whenever there is a trend-based question, you need to find the abnormal year, then try to solve the question because you won't be able to solve it through facts. Definitely you'll have the facts, but it's very difficult to solve this. So this is your fact-based, how exactly the growth slowed down. 14, there is, you see 2008, 3.9%. This is the growth slowed down, the steadily increase nahi hua hai. 6 to 8% के बीच में एक growth here is 3%. Understanding the nominal and real GDP or growth percentage here. The substitution of steel for wooden plows in agriculture production is an example of. For any production process, what are the major 2 factors you need? What are the factors of production? Land, labor, capital, and entrepreneurship. Major 2 factors of production which define your efficiency is labor and capital. The more capital goods you have, the efficiency of production increases. That means when you substitute from wooden to steel, this is what the question is asking. That means first you have some sort of capital intensity increasing. Capital augmenting progress means that if I increase my capital intensity by 1%, the efficiency also increases by 1%. So when I invest from wooden to steel, am I investing more money? And will that money give me more productivity? This is nothing but technological progress. Though there are theories which explain both capital augmenting and labor augmenting, we don't have to go beyond, we don't have to understand that. We just have a basic question. You don't need any technical knowledge here. Simple है कि capital में कुछ change हो रहा है. Labor better काम कर पाएगा जब capital में कुछ change हुआ है. So next time when I have to invest, my investment would go down because my efficiency is more. This is what is capital augmenting technological progress. Is this clear? You can't learn or you can't understand this from any particular book. ये on the go paper में ही दिमाग लगाना होगा. Factor of production दो हैं and हमने capital में कुछ change किया है. So it doesn't have to do with labor augmentation. It has mostly capital augmentation or capital. And since I'm investing more capital to get more efficiency, it is capital augmenting. Is it clear? You can't read this in the book. You have to solve it in the exam itself. An increase in absolute and per capita real GNP do not connote a higher level of economic development if. There's a difference between, or does GDP measure development? We have two concepts. One is the concept of growth. What do we mean by growth? What is meaning of growth? Total output increasing. Rate of increase of output is growth. That means whatever output I am producing, that output is, and how do I measure output? Through GDP. There are various other variables apart from GDP that could be. All of these are measuring output only. The other concept is economic development. How is growth different from development? Quantity और quality का मतलब क्या होता है? That cannot be measured. This is definition of something that cannot be measured. Human development is measured through Human Development Index. What is the difference between output and development? What multiple factors? For example, if we say that GDP of India is this much, we can't say India is developed. When do we say particular country is developed? Social, political. Okay. If you say social, political, along with economic. Okay. Anything else? Standard. What is standard of living? Standard of living का मतलब क्या होता है? वो तो अलग चीज है. Standard of living is mostly coming from your output only. जितनी इनकम होगी उतने गुड्स एंड सर्विसेज होंगे, उतनी स्टैंडर्ड ऑफ लिविंग होगी. तो दैट्स मोस्टली रिलेटेड टू ग्रोथ. व्हाट्स डेवलपमेंट देन? Yes, one of the factors is definitely if your growth is increasing, that is output is increasing, that means income will be generated. But do we know how this income is distributed? So one of the aspects of development is that it talks about distribution of income. You might have 1% of the whole population taking all of the growth, 99% not getting anything. So we definitely can say growth happened, but the country is not developed because income distribution is not equitable. This is one of the factors. There are multiple other factors also for development. Now, if this is the case, that growth says increase in income, but development says it's not just increase in income, it is also about distribution of income, right? This is what the question is asking. Question is saying, an increase in absolute and per capita real GDP do not connote a higher development if. That means output of the country is increasing, but the country is not a developed country. Output is increasing, but it does not connote a higher level of development. Why? This is what the question is saying. So this question is basically asking you the difference between growth and development. Industrial output fails to keep with agriculture output. That industrial output is not increasing as agriculture output. not directly related. Agriculture output fails to keep with industrial output. Poverty and unemployment increase. Imports grow faster than exports. Out of the four, which is the most appropriate option? Distribution aspect. Income is increasing, but it is not increasing for everyone. This is what it means, poverty and unemployment increasing. Though this option also makes some sense because development is also related to structure of economy. An economy is said to be developed if its contribution comes from higher technology areas or higher productivity areas. What are the higher productivity areas in any economy? It's industry and service sector. If your economy is mostly based on agriculture, it will not be considered as a developed economy. Why? For example, India mein 45% of the people are in agriculture. That is not considered as a good thing. Why? Because the problem with agriculture is agriculture's productivity is low. You cannot increase efficiency beyond a point. That means the maximum income increase that will happen in agriculture is fixed. You can't go beyond an income because you can't increase its productivity. But in industry and services, you don't have that limitation. Some industrial sector do have, but services mein there's no limitation. So jitni productivity बढ़ती जाएगी, उतनी income बढ़ेगी. This is why we say if production is coming mostly from industry and service, that country can said to be more developed. But if it is coming from agriculture, it is not developed. But this statement is not conclusive because it does not mention about services. तो more appropriate distribution वाला aspect है. It's not about structure of the economy. Though development has one feature, that what exactly is structure? Yes. What is the statement saying? Increase in absolute and real GDP do not. तो ये first part क्या है? When increase in GNP happens, what is increase in GNP? Whether it is absolute or per capita. Per capita is total divided by population. तो increase in GNP का क्या मतलब होता है? Growth, not development, growth. Economic growth is change in GDP, change in output. Does not mean development. So it's asking me the difference between growth and development. The GDP or GNP, though, it's similar. Output measurement can happen when I'm measuring the national product, that is GNP. When I'm measuring the domestic product, that's GDP. Both variables are measuring output. So output बढ़ रहा है, but development नहीं हो रही है. So growth हो रही है, but development नहीं हो रही है. तो statement बोल रहा है. Is it clear? It's a very simple question asking you the difference between growth and development. There are multiple factors on which they both differ. One of the factors is redistribution. So what happened if you read the developmental theory? After World War II, a number of policies were given to countries to increase their development profile. उनकी technology बढ़ा रहे थे. But 1980s में what they found out was, whatever technology increase we are doing, life of people on the ground is not changing. This is where if you see 1970 to 80, India also has very disturbances in polity because the economic life of people is not changing. So growth is happening, but वो सबको नहीं मिल रही है. This is where the economic development definition was redefined, that it is not just growth with efficiency, it is also redistribution. You also have to take care of inequality, poverty and unemployment. 1980, this definition of development was again changed because what they found out, what it was not just about growth with efficiency. Technology की बात नहीं थी अकेली. Distribution of growth was also important. These three factors had to be taken into account. This is what this question has asked. That if poverty and unemployment of a country is increasing, that means they have growth, but distribution is not good. That means they're not developed. Is it clear? The third definition of development changed, what you talked about capability, human development. 1990 में it said it's not just about economic factors. मान लिया growth हुई, मान लिया poverty unemployment कम हुई, but do the people know what they want to do with that income? And also whether all of the people in the country want income. Some people might be happy without the income also. This is where 1990 the Human Development Report came in. Capability approach, Amartya Sen and Mehboob Haq. They gave Human Development Index. It's not just about increase in income, it is also about the capabilities people have in terms of health and education. Some people might not want more income, they might be happy with a healthy life. They might be happy with reading with more education. So it's not just about income alone. This is how the definition of development has changed over a year. And this is 1990 also, where development also has a component for sustainability. It's not just about your development, it is also about future development. You can't take away the development of the future generation. You cannot use everything today. Because what is GDP? GDP is counting production. Subsidy to farmer is aiding in production. जो चीज़ 15 की बननी थी, 5 रुपए हमने फार्मर को दिए कि आप बनाओ, तो उसने 10 लगाए, तो मैंने 10 काउंट किए, तो 5 जो मैंने दिए वो भी तो काउंट होंगे. But transfer payment is not aiding to production. So if I've given a scholarship or an allowance, there's no production activity happening. जब होगा वो ऐड हो जाएगा. But right now it's a transfer payment from government to the person. This is not counted. But whenever that is used, then it might be counted. पहला ट्रांसफर ये इसी का क्वेश्चन है ना, उसके आगे का क्वेश्चन नहीं है. Then it changes. Is it clear? Growth and development. Another interesting question. Despite being a high saving economy, capital formation may not result in significant increase in output. Meaning of capital formation. What is capital formation? What is capital formation? So what future mein productivity बढ़ाए, that means addition to capital. How does that addition to capital happen? Investment. That means the savings in the economy have to be converted into, if you want to have certain amount of investment, that is creation of asset, that means the total consumption you make, out of that consumption you will have to sacrifice some part of today's consumption for future. When you do this, you are allowing investment. So whatever investment happens from the savings, this conversion of savings into investment is what we call as capital formation. Now the question is saying high saving economy hai, capital formation is happening, but this capital formation, when investment is happening, my output is not increasing. So it's a high saving economy. That means savings are being converted into investment. But this process of capital formation is not leading to output increase. Now, why is the output not increasing? Why is I am spending too much money, but I am not able to produce anything. This is understood from a variable which we call as capital output ratio. That how much capital or investment is required to generate an output of 1 unit. That one country has a capital output ratio of 5, the other country has a capital ratio of 10. What do we mean by this? कि एक को तो 5,000 लग रहे हैं एक यूनिट बनाने में, दूसरे को 10,000 लग रहे हैं. What do we mean by this? If a country has an ICOR of 5, that means one is using 5 units of capital to produce 1 unit of output. Country B is using 10 units of capital to produce 1 unit of output. Now, why can this happen, or why will this happen? One reason could be that this country is not using the capital efficiently. They're wasting capital. Now, why are they wasting capital? They do not have, their government administration is not effective. बहुत डिले होता है, काम लेट होता है, तो डिले से पैसे कॉस्ट बढ़ जाता है. What could be the other reason? This is ease of doing business government. What could be the other reason? The other reason of this could be that the project in which they are investing is different. One has established a software plant, the other is investing in steel. The nature of the project is such that capital required would be more. The nature of the product is such that the capital required is less. So a higher capital output ratio is not necessarily showing poor efficiency, but also depicting the nature of the project. दोनों reason की वजह से ICOR could be high. Question is saying if this is happening but this is not happening, that means definitely COR could be high. COR high क्यों है? उसके दोनों reason हो सकते हैं, but COR could be high. Weak administrative machinery, can this be the reason? Yes. Illiteracy, can this be the reason? Skill नहीं है लोगों के पास. High population density, too many number of people, I have to create more. capital required is more. High capital output ratio. All of the three means this. Capital output ratio high क्यों हुई? Because ये सब चीजें थी. So which is the most appropriate option? Now what this option shows is always read the options completely. Do not just read the first and think this is correct. Read all, because this explains all the three. So out of the four, most appropriate is okay. Savings to investment तो हो रहा है, but investment से output नहीं हो रहा because value ज़्यादा है. Too much capital being invested, output बढ़ ही नहीं रहा है. Either I'm throwing away the money or I've invested in a project which takes money. For example, I started with 1,000 crore, steel unit production 0. I had to add 1,000 more, steel production still 0. वो 10,000 पहुंचा तब steel का पहला unit आया. That means nature of the project is such that the core value was very high. Is this clear? All the three explain the first, poor efficiency. Understanding the basic terms. What do you mean by capital formation, and then what do you mean by capital output ratio? Which of the following activities constitute real sector in the economy? What is real sector? What is the real sector? Yes, any particular economy based on the functions it performs or the activities it does, it is divided into three sectors. So when you understand growth, we started, this is the starting point. Based on functions, one is the government sector. अब ये चीज सिर्फ गवर्नमेंट ही करती है. What happens with the government sector? What is the role of government in the economy? Yes. The role of the government is administration. The role of the government is administration is law and order is part of administration. Is redistribution, and the third is providing non-marketable goods and services, that is public goods. एक सेक्टर है, ये तीनों फंक्शन और कोई नहीं कर सकता है. Nobody can provide all this, and for doing this, the government will collect a. This is alone the government does it. Then another function is the function of production, which is called as the real sector. Production and consumption activity are done in the real sector. This is what is done by mostly households, non-financial firms, and non-profit organizations serving the household. These are the three major players here. One is the government function, the other is the function of production of active production of goods and services and consumption of the same. These three do this. Household, non-financial firms, and non-profit serving the households. Non-profit serving the household, for example, charitable organizations, which produce goods or produce services, but give it for lesser cost, but production happens. Now, whatever function the government and real sector do, they also have to engage in another function, that is the function of distribution or the function of exchange. जो good produce हुए हैं वो exchange भी करने हैं. Now, what happened when these two functions were only existing in the economy? Barter economy, there was significant issues. Goods जब exchange हुए या tax भी barter में pay करने लगे, there was a significant issues. So to improve the distribution or exchange function, a third function was introduced in the economy, which is called as the financial function. This is the sector which is dealing with money. Why this is not called real? Because money is not something which is real. Money is what you created and gave value in order to help these two sectors. Money कुछ exist नहीं करता है economy में. This is not real. This is something which you created so that you could perform the function of distribution and exchange. What is the meaning of money? The 100 rupee note which you have, what is the meaning of that? Money represents a claim on goods and services. That means money is only a unit which is helping me represent value. My claim on good service is nothing but my representation of value. That this good is 100 rupees worth. तो वो value ही तो बता रहा है उसकी. This is one of the functions of money, right? So financial sector is something which deals with money, which helps in distribution and exchange. Along with money, it also deals in financial securities. What is a financial security? For example, debt or a bond or a share. What is it? What does the meaning of a bond? Bond represents a debt claim from one person to another. What is shares? It represents ownership claim. That means financial security is nothing but representing a claim on money. एक बार debt money है और एक बार ownership money है. So anything that deals with money or financial security is nothing but a financial sector. Insurance, pension, all are dealing with money or claims on money. So my economy can be divided into government, real and financial. Is it clear? Functional differentiation hai. This sector was created to help here. Now if a farmer is harvesting crop, is it a government function? Real? Why? Because it is dealing in textiles, converting raw cotton into fabrics. Production. Commercial bank lending money. This is financial. This is nothing real. Money is not real. This is financial. Corporate body issuing bonds. The first two are correct. So when you start with the explanation of how the economy works, the circular flow, we understand the differentiation. कि प्रोडक्शन कंजम्पशन तो हो जाता बट वो डिस्ट्रीब्यूट इनकम नहीं कर पाए. उनको एक सेक्टर चाहिए था दैट वाज फाइनेंशियल. दो they can do distribution, but it is very difficult to do. This is why they introduced the financial sector, which is something which is not real. Production is always real. Financial is not. Answer is 1 and 2. A very basic question. With reference to physical capital, consider the following way. This is this year. What do you understand by capital? The general definition. There are 4 factors of production. That particular knowledge can help you solve this question. You don't need to know the difference between fixed and working. What is the meaning of capital in factor of production capital? Investment. What is that? So capital means investment. Capital is asset formation, but asset का मतलब क्या होता है? Asset, what is the definition of asset? Something which gives a future use. Asset is something which gives a future use. Capital is an asset which is used in production but not consumed in the process. This is what is the meaning of capital goods there. Physical capital इसी को बोलते हैं. Used in production but not consumed. Future use तभी देगा अगर consume नहीं हो रहा है. Now, if I go into this definition of fixed and working, fixed capital definitely would be this. Fixed, as the name suggests, fixed hai. So let us understand fixed only. A computer would be working capital or a fixed capital. Farmer's plow would be working or fixed. Understanding the meaning difference, just the meaning of the term. Can it be working or fixed? How? Why it is not fixed? Forget what is working. Why it is not fixed? Can you negate that plow is a fixed capital? What is fixed capital? Which is used in production but not consumed. That means you can use it again and again. तो अब वो इसी definition से वो fixed क्यों नहीं है? I'm not saying why it is working or not. I'm asking why it is not fixed. उससे depreciation तो अगर again if depreciation happens, why it is not fixed? Asset fixed होगा तभी depreciation होगी. What is what main? मतलब 4 मशीन है, main machine fixed है. Do you have any factor to negate that farmer's plow is not a fixed asset or a fixed capital? Efficiency of plow, how it can vary? That can vary of the computer also. i5 processor and i3 processor. Efficiency can vary. Is the definition of capital dependent on efficiency? Working means something which is used for consumption purposes. For example, electricity आपने use की. You've used it, but you have consumed it. So working purposes के लिए जो capital asset आप use कर रहे हो, that is mostly your working capital. Plow is never a working capital, it always is. So you just go by fixed only. This option is incorrect, this option is correct. Now using the same yarn used by the weaver. Working capital because yarn would be consumed. So this is not fixed. Petrol. Working. So understand, you just needed to know the meaning of fixed asset, which we do when we do factors of production. कोई बहुत दिमाग लगाना ही नहीं था यहाँ पे. Yes. Answer here is हाँ, डे टू डे यूज में यान भी हो गई, पेट्रोल भी हो गया. हाँ, तो वो कंज्यूम नहीं हो रहा ना, ये दोनों तो कंज्यूम होंगे. Working capital is my day-to-day requirements are being fulfilled through this. That means whatever money I've kept for these day-to-day consumption requirement is being fulfilled here. So they will be consumed. Fixed is not consumed. As the name suggests, वो fixed ही है. You don't have to read anything here. You just need to know the meaning of capital. And this would be easy. ये tricky question था. Sectors of economy. You can see class 6th information they use and make a very tricky question. Now, how do we divide the various sectors of the economy? Primary, secondary, tertiary, then quaternary and quinary, right? What is the primary sector? No, agriculture, but uska, why agriculture in primary? Because primary talks about natural raw material. When this natural raw material can be further processed, this becomes secondary. Then what is tertiary? Services which improve the efficiency of primary, and this is tertiary sector. And tertiary sector can have three types of services, can be three types. And quinary. What are the most basic services? In dono ka, yes, transportation, storage, all of those would be tertiary. But if something is helping you improve the process, innovation in any of this, information innovation based is quaternary. This is your information based services which can help you improve efficiency. Basic processes tertiary hai. And quinary, the gold collared decision makers, administrators, decision makers. This is what is the highest level of service. Public administration services is quinary services. Storage of agriculture produce, secondary, tertiary, quaternary, quinary. How? Storage. Storage is a service or a process? Is it here or is it secondary? Is it clear? It's not secondary. Dairy farm. Primary. Mineral exploration. This is what the confusion there is. If we are only talking about extraction, that is mining, it is definitely primary. And if we are talking about exploration in terms of research and development, then it is quaternary. यही थोड़ा सा इसमें confusion है, that exploration they are talking about R&D services or the mining services. So it's either primary or it is quaternary, but it is definitely not tertiary. It's definitely not tertiary. It's either primary or quaternary depending on what interpretation they take. Sometimes UPSC interpretation can vary. Our interpretation, if it talks about research and development, it's quaternary, or if it is talking about mining, then it is primary. It's definitely not tertiary. Weaving cloth, because we are dealing in processing, that means it is, answer would be, is it clear? This is why sometimes it is said, read the class 6th NCERT. ये basics ही नहीं पता, primary, secondary and tertiary. A lot of students made this confusion or had a doubt because they thought maximum यहीं तक होता है. You don't know about quaternary and quinary. Services का distinction is these three. In fact, what if we say services in India, what do we mean by services? There are three major sectors in India: agriculture, allied, industry and services. What do we mean by services? When we say growth of services was 8%, 55% of India's GDP come from services. What do we mean by services there? You see how they have defined, or they have taken all three there, all three types of activity. Services in India comprises of telecom services of broadcasting and communication. This is one level of service. Another service is professional and financial services. Then you have all types of services that are being included. NCERT में तो ये डिटेल मिलेगा, primary, tertiary, this. This is the detail given in NCERT के which activities where. This is mostly which is covered in newspaper, survey and everywhere. It's just example, इसमें और IT sector भी है. So how you can solve the question based on understanding. See, this is what is the sector of the economy: resource based in extraction, natural raw material, manufacturing, processing, service based activities, the basic ones, knowledge based activity. ये तीनों service sector हैं: tertiary, quaternary and quinary. All of the three are services only. The next is money supply, money and money supply. Is it clear how GDP based questions? You've seen how basic they were. No technicality required. You only need to know how production happens in the economy, who does what is the meaning of growth and development. There are no technicalities involved whatsoever कि GDP में क्या add हो रहा है और क्या add नहीं हो रहा है. Second is the money sector. With reference to bitcoins, consider the following statements. What do you understand by bitcoins? Everyone has heard this name. Cryptocurrency, what's the difference between this type of currency and the normal currency? Why was this introduced? What's the concept? Because centralized currencies have a problem that your value might be lost. If you print more, your value gets lost. This is why decentralized, no control of anyone. This is the only fact which you have to know here. Bitcoins are tracked by central banks. Uska reason of being is that it should not be controlled. It is not centralized. So one statement is not correct. Automatically you eliminate A and B. If you know the reason of why bitcoins, you have 2 and 3 and 3. That means you don't even have to read the third statement. वो correct है. You only have to decide on second. Anyone with a Bitcoin address can send and receive bitcoins from anywhere else with a Bitcoin address. Now read this statement again. Does it make sense? अगर बिटकॉइन में ट्रेड करना है तो ऐसे ही तो ट्रेड होगा. You need an account to trade from one Bitcoin address to another Bitcoin address. It's not even testing anything. इसके अलावा और क्या तरीका हो सकता है बिटकॉइन करने का? It's just a generic statement written which doesn't have a meaning. Is just trying to impose a lot of English just to make you confused कि कुछ बहुत technical है. One Bitcoin address with another. So this statement is correct. The answer here would be 2 and 3 years. So how do you need to register somewhere to buy bitcoins? So anyone, why do you think anyone is now? Anyone can participate. Uska kaam ye hai ki it's not controlled. You'll distribute it. You can trade in bitcoins if you want to accept your salaries in bitcoins. If someone is having those bitcoins, they can give you that particular address. Qualification nahi chahiye. There's no KYC there because there's no central agency which controls that. For that, you need to have a central agency and it authorizes. Then only you can take. Who will authorize when there's no central agency? Anyone can do that. You can start mining of Bitcoin.
So anyone word से थोड़ा बहुत general था इसलिए.
नहीं बहुत. You are creating a confusion. Anyone की जगह क्या हो सकता है? If you have a doubt on anyone, what do you mean here? That not anyone but any specialized entity. तो अगर specialized entity है तो वो special क्यों बनी? Do you have anything to think on further? So you are definitely creating a confusion on anyone. So let's say it's not anyone, it is a special one. Then special is based on what? You don't have a qualifying criteria. Even if you don't know what is Bitcoin. कोई qualifying criteria है कि Bitcoin लेना है नहीं लेना है. That's your choice. Is it clear? Just think more on the question itself. Don't just jump onto solving it. If you think one more step, this is what happens. In the exam, so we think we thought this and बाहर आके लगता क्यों ही सोचा था वो. because now you have time to think one more step. There you did not think one more step. So if you have a confusion, think more. What can happen, then solve. Answer here would be what? So the taxation is movement from one to another. It might be tracked. They can, they cannot. जरूरी थोड़ी ऐसे तो अपने ही इनकम को कैसे ट्रैक कर लेते हैं वो? कैन दे ट्रैक ऑल ऑफ द ट्रांजैक्शंस दैट आर हैपनिंग? जो ब्लैक मनी ट्रांजैक्शंस है, दिस इज समथिंग बियॉन्ड द इनकम टैक्स. दिस इज व्हाई इट इज कॉल्ड ब्लैक मनी. सो ट्रैकिंग हो पाएगी, इसका ये मतलब थोड़ी कि सेंट्रल बैंक विल हैव कंट्रोल. Question talked about central bank in general, is specific. This is what you don't have to understand the technicalities involved. Basics से ही हो जाएगा. Which of the following statement correctly describes the meaning of legal tender money? What do you mean by legal tender? So if you read about the money chapter, class 12th NCERT, money evolution happened from coins to paper. Why did people trust coins? Because coins had intrinsic value. Trust started eroding when I started reducing intrinsic value. This is something which we called as debasing. आप coin में content कम करते जाओ metal का, people will lose trust. Shifted to paper because of a lot of inconvenience with coins. Now, why will people trust paper currency? At any currency has a meaning. Any particular thing to be used as money or currency, it has to perform three functions. What functions? It can help you make the barter में exchange मुश्किल था, exchange होना चाहिए. Second, it should be a unit of account. That means it should help measure value. And third, it should help store value. Now, all of the three functions can happen through number of units. Bitcoin se bhi ho sakta तीनों. But why Bitcoin is not accepted but your paper currency is accepted? Because all of the three do not work until and unless you have trust. So Bitcoin maybe you can exchange. This is the most important factor. Any particular unit can perform these functions, but if you don't have trust, it will not function as currency. If the other person refuses to accept your payment, the money function is gone. फिर तो exchange ही नहीं हो पाएगा, right? Now, trust is the major factor. Who creates the trust in paper? It is the government. And this concept is called as, by law, you have to accept this form of payment. So whenever you make an exchange or you have an obligation on someone, you can settle that obligation through this form of currency. Government ने बोला है कि वो note accept करना है. Legal tender acceptance could be limited. For example, it's not necessary that you accept all of your payment in coins. Coins maximum of 1000 rupees की payment कर सकते हो. But when it is in the form of notes, it is unlimited. But why do you do that? Because it is the government. The money which a creditor is under compulsion to accept. Trust is created by the government because that form of money is legal tender. This is the most basic understanding of money. Prime Minister 8 November 2016 said 500 and the 2000 rupees note will not be a legal tender. That means no longer does it enjoy the trust of the government. You can choose not to accept. This is why people were converting 500 and 1000 rupees. This year, last year, they had converted the 2000. They said that this will not be accepted on after this date. That means not under any compulsion to accept. This is what is the meaning of legal tender. You can refuse check. वो ट्रस्ट है ना, फंजिबल बोलता है उनको, फंजिबल करेंसीज दैट यू आर एक्सेप्टिंग ऑन ट्रस्ट. यू कैन डेफिनेटली रिफ्यूज. इफ यू वांट टू गिव पेमेंट टू समवन, दे कैन डेफिनेटली से नो टू अ चेक. जिसने करप्शन किया उसके अगेंस्ट लॉ है ना कि इफ द चेक बाउंसेस यू विल हैव टू, देयर इज अ पीनल प्रोविजन अगेंस्ट द चेक बाउंस. ट्रस्ट, सी, मनी इज वन फॉर्म ऑफ एक्सचेंज, बट वन फॉर्म आई एम गिविंग मोर ऑप्शंस टू एक्सचेंज. To perform this function of exchange, I have given payment instruments. Check is a payment instrument. Draft is a payment instrument. You have UPI. You have net banking, RTGS, IMPS. I'm facilitating all these processes. That you can definitely refuse. But to make the process easy, I have given you these options. मना तो कर ही सकते हो ना, नोट मना नहीं कर सकते हो. Is it clear what is legal tender? All of these questions are very basic in nature. Money multiplier in an economy increases which one of the following. This is again NCRT. What is money multiplier? This is the most important function of banks in an economy. What do the banks do in an economy? What is the function of banks? One is they are the meeting point for savers and investors, facilitate the meeting of savers and investors. And in this process of facilitating savers and investors, bank create money. This is the most important function of bank, that banks anywhere work on a principle that is a fractional reserve system. Now, what is fractional reserve system? That whatever X amount you get in deposit, a percentage of this you can keep as reserve. This is what is the meaning of fraction. It's not a full reserve, it is a fractional reserve. Percentage as reserve, rest money you can give as. That means in a particular economy, deposit and loan both are existing at the same time. A bank got 100 rupees as deposit, 10% was the reserve, 90 rupees was given as loan. So economy में how much money exists? 100 plus, हमने 100 से 100 plus 90 बना दिया. 100 which is the liability of the bank to that person and 90 which is the bank's asset. तो A से 100 लिए और B को 90 loan दिया. So from 100 I have created 100 plus 90. This is how banks create money. This is called as the money multiplication process. Genesis is fractional reserve. Is it clear? Now, why does the system not fail? Trust. Why are the people trusting banks? Why does it? You see how the problem can be. If A comes to the bank to take this 100 rupees, bank does not have that 100 because bank has given that to B as a loan. Why does the system not fail? There are two reasons why this system does not fail. One is that there are at any point of time number of depositors. So all of the depositors will not come at the same time. जो आएगा उसको दूसरे वाले depositors can give the money. This is the law of averages, that not everyone is going to come and take the money at the same time. Second, I'm going to ensure that bank has enough amount of money to cover for this. This is where the role of central bank comes in. This is the role of government. What does the government do to create this trust? Government has given something called as, or created the feature of deposit insurance. 5 lakh tak aapka paisa safe hai, so that you don't rush if there is a problem with the bank. Otherwise, RBI also has regulations. But this process from deposit to loan, I have created from 100 to 190. This is what is called as the money multiplication process. Question is asking, money multiplier increases with which of the following? Now, see the function. Deposit se loan ban raha hai. When will more loans be created? When I have more deposits. Increase in CRR. CRR and SLR are both a percentage of. If I increase the reserve, will I have more loans or less loans? Less. So will money multiplier increase or decrease? So these two cannot be correct. Otherwise also जो CRR increase से होगा वो SLR increase से होगा. तो ये दो option तो इकट्ठे तो सही नहीं होंगे. Increase in banking habit, increase in population. Now increase in population, does it mean anything? But if I say increase in banking habit, what does it mean? More possibility of deposit. So out of the two, which is more appropriate? Jitne zyada deposits. If you see, there are two factors on which money multiplication depends. One is how much deposits come, and second, what is the reserve. These two are factors which are deciding your how much money multiplication happens. This is what then the NCRT explains. One is currency deposit ratio and the other is reserve deposit ratio. Just reading the basics from class 12th NCRT, this process is not at all difficult. Answer is B, increase in banking habit of the population. Very interesting question. If you withdraw 1 lakh in cash from your demand deposit, the immediate effect on aggregate money supply in the economy will be. If money is withdrawn from the bank account, will money supply reduce or increase? in any particular economy, money supply, the most basic is what? Currency plus money in bank. M2, M3, M4 व M1 के derivatives हैं, M1 के आगे चीजें ऐड होंगी. Currency with the public and demand deposit, right? Question is saying, if you remove 1 lakh from the bank account and you add 1 here, what will be the change on money supply? Answer will be, what have you done? 1 lakh बैंक से निकाला और 1 lakh currency में आ गया. Is there any change in money supply? Is it clear? Any doubt here? This is what the question is. If it is not immediate, or what is the meaning of immediate here? A person had deposited 6 lakh rupees in the bank account, right? 10% is the reserve ratio. How much loan can the bank give? 5.4, 60,000 is the reserve. But if I withdraw 1 lakh from the bank account, how much loan can the bank give? 50,000 is what the reserve is. Loan is 4.5. In this particular scenario, I don't have anything in hand. I only have 6 lakh. What is the currency total in the public hand? 6 plus 5.4. 6 is this. Currency is 5.4. Loan diya 5.4 ka. What is the money in this case? 5 in currency, 1 in bank. 5 in bank account, 1 in currency, and 4.5. Currency of 4.5 loan, 5 in bank account, 1 in currency. This is what? 6 plus 4.5. And this is 6 plus 5.4. Is the money supply not reducing? Then how is the answer? Leave it unchanged. इस केस में it is 11.4 is the money supply. In this case 10.5 is the money supply. 90,000 की money supply कम हो रही है क्योंकि 1 लाख जो निकल गया है उसका लोन नहीं जा सकता. So reserve is not part of my money supply. वो तो base money का part होता है reserve. And even if it is reserve में तो पैसे और कम हो रहे हैं. You understand this? Why this immediate is a very big word here? Because immediately I might not have to give a loan. This is why it is still 6 lakh, because I might not create. मुझे पता नहीं है कि मेरे पास 6 है 5 है जब तक मेरे को लोन नहीं देना है. This is why it is unchanged. But the moment I have to give a loan, I know it is either 5.4 or 4.5. अगर 1 लाख निकाल दिया तो मैं 90,000 का लोन नहीं दे सकता हूं. So money supply will fall only if I have to create a loan. This 5.4 and 4.5 is what is creating the problem. Because in first case it was 6, in the second case it was 5 plus 1. So when the loan had to be given, then only my money supply fell by 90,000. But if there is no loan to be made, that means I need to just check the immediate effect. So immediate effect तो 6 था, second case में 5 plus 1 था, no change. But the moment I have to make a loan, 6 पे loan I can make of 5.4, 5 पे I can make a loan of. So the money supply fell only when I have to make a. And when we say immediate, that means immediately तो loan लेना नहीं आया कोई. This is why it is changed. Is it clear? 6 converted to 5 plus 1. 6 in bank account, 5 in bank and 1 in currency. It's the same. But the moment the loan was made, in one case loan of 6 I could make 5.4, but 5 पे मैं 4.5 का लोन है because 1 निकाल लिए. इस पे जो 90 का लोन बनता, which is the difference between the two, this is something I could not create because I did not have the deposit. This is why in short term or immediate unchanged, but the moment time passes, the money supply will fall. Is it clear? How money multiplication and how this question. Options also made it easy because उतने ही same amount से reduction नहीं होगा, reduction होगा reserve हटा के. तो 1 lakh से कम नहीं हुआ, कम हुआ था because I could not make 90,000 worth of loan on 1 lakh. I cannot make the full loan. Why? Because I have a fractional reserve. Fraction is something which I have to keep aside. I made it easy from the options, otherwise this was a good question. Which one of the following effects of creation of black money has been the main cause of worry to the government of India? What do you mean by black money? Income which is illegal. Is it illegal income? Black money is something which is unaccounted for. Government of India usually will say that you file an ITR and report us the true income. If you don't report the true income, that is the income which is unaccounted for. What is the problem which government has with this income? That I could not get the... So again, read the options. Diversion of resources to purchase of real estate and investing in luxury. This could be a problem, but the question is asking what are the effect of main cause of worry. Investment in unproductive activities, large donation to political parties. Loss of revenue. Large donation to political parties not a main cause of worry. This is why they had to add growth of regionalism. Here alone the problem नहीं हो सकता है. Loss of revenue to state exchequer. Is it clear? Black money का मतलब ये है unaccounted. I don't know it. I am not capturing it in the tax. Money multiplier. The question got repeated in 21. Money multiplier increases with which of the following? Is the same increase in banking habit. Question was repeated. With reference to central bank digital currencies, consider the following statements. Now we discussed how we have trust in the currency because it is legal tender. Legal tender because the government has asked to accept. There are two types. One is coins and the other is paper. Now paper, this legal tender, one of the problems is that this is controlled by central, and if they start printing more, that means I have a problem, the value will be lost. This is why one of the most important function or the most important function of central bank is to control the value. This is what is control inflation. Value बचानी है पैसे की ताकि trust बना रहे. This is why central banks control inflation. Now this is a problem which Bitcoin tried to solve. Bitcoin said no one will have the control of printing, it will be decentralized. But people did not trust Bitcoin. Why? Bitcoin can perform the function of exchange. Bitcoin can help measure value. Bitcoin also can store value. In fact, they can store value better than this. Why? Because there is no central control. Then why Bitcoin was not trusted? Why? Government control ही तो problem था. There are number of issues. Why? Because Bitcoin is not a physical currency, it's a digital currency. People don't trust it because they don't know value क्या होगी. Speculation हो सकता है. Both the reasons are true. There's no control, speculation हो सकता है. And digital तो और भी कम trust है. We don't know if it gets hacked or something happens to my account. Right? Now, government wants to adopt the same features of Bitcoin, having features of legal tender. This is why governments world over have created something called as central bank digital currency. This is a legal tender and it is controlled by central bank. RBI also is trying to create such a currency of its own, and last year they had released a concept paper on the same. That people are enamored by digital currency, why not create a legal tender which is digitally available? Feature सब same होंगे, बस उसका एक ही होगा कि ये digitally available है. So that people can trust more digital, and they want digital, this is what they should trade in. This is what is the concept of CBDCs world over, trying to combine the features of the two. This digitally and this legal tender centrally controlled. This is what is the meaning of central bank digital currency. It is possible to make payments in digital currency without using dollar or SWIFT system. Now, if this CBDC is controlled, is mostly spread across the world, can I convert without converting it to dollar? Can I use without converting it to dollar? Right now, people don't accept your currency because of a lot of factors. But if most people start accepting it, can I use without US? जरूरी थोड़ी US अगर सब ये हैं. For example, one of this digital currencies controlled by one organization is also your SDR. IMF uses it. If everyone starts using SDR for exchange, why would you need dollar for exchange? Or SWIFT system. What is a SWIFT system? It's a payment interaction, messaging system between banks. So if all of the banks are centrally connected here, why would you need this messaging system? A private messaging system hai. You would not need to convert into dollar, and you would not need the SWIFT system. You can definitely use it. Digital currency can be distributed with a condition program into such as a time frame for spending it. Now, when the CBDC concept note came in, RBI could decide the features of the currency. जो मैंने concept note मैंने बताया इसमें क्योंकि मेरा central control है, I can decide the various features of the currency. When I decide the features, I can also decide how much time you can use. Since the question is asking, it can be. And since it is centrally controlled, I can have number of features of the currency. Even if I don't, वो मेरे हाथ में क्या भी feature रखूं. So this statement is, both the statements would be. Is this clear? The first statement is very basic. It is saying you can make payments in digital currency. Legal tender hai. If you want to accept, you can definitely accept. So you don't need to use dollar or SWIFT. You can do for this also. If another country wants to accept Indian rupee, for example, when India bought significant amount of oil from Russia, we have paid them in rupees. Yes, the rupees was paid. Physical हमने उन्हें cash दे दिया. उसकी जगह हम ये दे सकते हैं उनको. So did they accept the payment without dollar or SWIFT? When they can accept this, they can definitely accept this also. Very generic statements on the two. No advanced features were asked. Same on digital rupee. This CBDC is nothing but digital rupee. This year they just changed the reference. Central bank digital currency is nothing but the digital rupee. Digital rupee, why? Rupee because it is a legal tender. Digital because it only exists in the digital realm. It's a sovereign currency issued by RBI in alignment with its monetary policy. Is it controlled by central bank? Just like I print paper, I can print this currency also in digitally. It appears as liability on RBI's balance sheet. Is it an asset or a liability? Whenever RBI distributes currency to the public, so what RBI does is RBI gives it to the banks then can distribute it to the public. This becomes RBI's asset or liability. Asset is something. What is the definition of asset? Asset is something which gives you a future benefit. What is a liability? Something which you owe to anyone. What does this currency signify? Is it an asset? Is it helping RBI to get any future benefit? But if currency you take to the RBI, will RBI give a value of some worth of that particular note? That means it is the, I promise to pay the bearer a value of this much amount. This is why it is a liability. All of the currencies are liability. Benefit is कि जब भी ये liability print होती है, इसके against government security issue होती है. This is the asset which earns income, and the currency which the liability they have taken, this is no interest to be paid. So if you see what happened in the process, when I issued currency, I took government securities. Government securities will earn me an income of interest, but on the currency, do I have to pay interest? Difference between the two is what we call as the seigniorage. Cost of printing में, this is the benefit which the RBI gets. दोनों के बीच में difference है. This is why RBI then gives the surplus to the government. Every year you will have RBI surplus to the government. Why? Because asset is income generating, liability is no interest. This is why the surplus is given back to the government. It is insured against inflation by its very design. Is it linked or is there interest on the currency? When there's no interest, can it be insured against inflation? जब RBI ने currency note दिया, उस note में कोई interest दिया? This is what we said. There is no. If there's no interest, how will you be protected against inflation? If you don't get a return, value will be decreasing. It is not insured. Is it clear? If I print more और मैं interest नहीं दे रहा, तो value उसकी कम होगी जितनी print ज़्यादा किया. It's a freely convertible currency against money and cash. What is the feature of CBDC? Central bank currency is a legal tender and it is available. Which is available? If it is a legal tender, can it be converted into money and cash? फायदा इसीलिए होगा उसका. So answer would be 1, 2 and 4. Is it clear? If you understand the evolution of money, Bitcoin came as a response to central bank currencies losing value. So central banks evolved themselves to provide a feature on the digital legal tender plus digital. You'll understand तीनों features से legal tender plus digital से you can solve this question. Is it clear? Digital rupee? Evolution in money, mostly a dynamic concept covered in the newspapers. Very basic questions on monetary policy, part of money. When the RBI reduces the SLR by 50 basis point, what is likely to happen? What is SLR? Fractional reserve mein, you have deposit. Deposit is converted into loan and a part of deposit is kept as reserve. India has two types of reserve requirements, one in the form of cash and the other in the form of what? In what form? Government securities, gold, cash or any other security approved by RBI. Bank will keep it in what form? चारों में से बैंक कौन से फॉर्म में यूज करेगी? Why government security? Because I earn interest. इन चारों में से एक ही interest bearing है. This is why I'll keep most of the money in government security. Now if SLR reduces, can I give more loans? Or I can also make the loans? क्योंकि मेरा पैसा कम फंस रहा है. GDP growth rate increases drastically. Might not happen. If foreign institutional investors bring more capital, commercial banks cut their lending rates, drastically reduce liquidity. Is it clear? It's mostly to do with how loans happen. If less money has to be kept as reserve, I can give more loans or I can make the loans cheaper because less money is stuck. More money is stuck, this would be expensive. Because why expensive? I have to pay a percentage interest on complete deposit. But this is the money which is not giving me a return. So I will want to take the maximum return from. But if I can give more loan, I can give them cheaper. This is why cut the lending rates. With reference to Indian economy, which of the following are components of monetary policy? Monetary policy, what is the meaning of monetary policy? The central bank control over supply and demand of money. Monetary policy is central bank control over supply and demand. Central bank control, bank rate. What is the meaning of bank rate? Bank rate is the rate at which RBI gives money to the banks in return for any security. The difference between bank and repo rate is that bank rate could be any security, repo rate is only government security. In repo, there is a repurchase, in bank, there is no repurchase. Open market operations. What are open market operations? Buying and selling of security by the central bank. Both of them are related to money supply and money demand. I can buy if I want to give money. If I can sell if I want to absorb money. Public debt related to government. When I have an imbalance between expenditure and tax. Public revenue, it is my government revenue. Both of them are fiscal policy. 1 and 2 are monetary policy. Answer here is C. Very basic question. So if you see year 2014, 15, 16, 17, वहाँ सब बेसिक क्वेश्चन पूछे हैं जीडीपी के मनी के. 17 के बाद जब ये क्वेश्चन खत्म हो गए, क्वेश्चन की डिफिकल्टी लेवल हैज स्टार्टेड इंक्रीजिंग. What is the purpose of marginal cost of funds based lending rate announced by RBI? How does the RBI decide, or how does the bank decide the loan rate? By external benchmark. One of the things about monetary policy is whatever the RBI does should be done by the banks also. Then only people will get the benefit, inflation or growth. For example, if I have to control inflation, what does the RBI do to control inflation? It can increase the repo rate. Now, if the RBI increases the repo rate, people should also get a loan rate should be high. Also, whenever they deposit in the bank, if bank is getting money at a higher rate from the RBI, will the bank have to offer more deposit? अगर मुझे RBI से पैसा मिल रहा था 5% पे, now I'm getting 7%. Will people be ready to give me money at 6%? That means deposit rate also has to go up. So whenever the RBI increases repo, both deposit and loan rate should increase. Simultaneously, if repo rate decreases, the loan rate should decrease and also the deposit rate should decrease. Then only people will see the change. Now, how does this happen if I cannot control how the banks decide the loan? First, this relation is clear. How both of them should reflect what RBI is doing. Increase hoga to dono increase hoga, decrease hoga to both should decrease, right? Now, if this should happen, I should control how bank can decide their rate for loan. Because if I am making it from 5 to 7 or I am making it from 5 to 3, the bank is not shifting from 5. Because bank has own method of loan. This is where the RBI stepped in and decided certain mechanisms to decide the loan rate. RBI was not setting loan rate. RBI was just giving a formula to decide it. 2009, the RBI gave a formula based on base rate, which was based mostly on average cost of funds. आप जो भी पैसा इकट्ठा करते हो उसका एवरेज आप लोन रेट बना लो. This function failed. RBI shifted to marginal cost of lending rate, that it should not be on average cost, it should be on marginal cost. Again, the formula for MCLR was given by RBI, but figures in the formula were put in by the banks. This system also failed, so the RBI moved to external benchmark. आप नहीं decide करोगे. Choose a benchmark, for example repo, and choose whatever spread you want to keep. ये change होगा तो rate change होगा. Why? Because this system failed to transmit this. I had given you a formula, but you were putting in values in the formula. This is why the system failed, but this is what the genesis was. These guidelines, so MCLR were nothing but formula given guidelines, help improve transparency in the methodology followed by the banks for determining the interest rate on loans. This was the purpose of it. These help ensure availability of bank loans at interest rates which are fair to the borrowers as well as the banks. This is what the whole genesis of MCLR was. Though it failed, but the purpose was this too, that I will tell you methodology which is fair both to you and to the customers. Both of them were correct. This system failed. We shifted to external benchmark in 2019. Now for retail loans and MSME loans, you have to follow this. Older loans can continue on MCLR, but new loans after 19 will be followed on external for two types of customers, retail customers and MSME customers. Rest you decide how you can. So this was mostly a current affairs driven question. Something which appeared in the news from monetary policy. Monetary Policy Committee. What is the meaning of Monetary Policy Committee? Why Monetary Policy Committee? Created in 2016. Who decides monetary policy in India? RBI. So what's the problem with RBI? That we shifted to MPC. ये भी dynamic question है. Anything related in the news? He's the chairman still in MPC. See, there were few things what the RBI were doing first. In what is the objective of RBI? Or what are the roles of RBI? One is to control inflation. Take care of what else? Bank regulator. What else? It's a bank to the government, that means it regulates government. Right? What else? It is also a custodian of foreign exchange and can sometimes intervene in the exchange rate market. India does not have free float, India has a managed float. Managed means RBI can intervene. Now if you see out of all these functions, what are the major tools with the RBI to control this? अगर inflation ज़्यादा है तो RBI percentage, debt ज़्यादा है तो again interest rate. This also has an implication on interest rate. So the tool with RBI is only interest rate, and function it has multiple. So the question that came in front of one of the committees set up by the RBI was that what exactly is the RBI doing with its monetary policy? The monetary policy का objective क्या है? When the policy tool is one, but the role is multiple, we don't know what you are doing. It's all very secretive. We don't know how you follow anything. Are you trying to do this? You're trying to do this, or you're trying to do this, because cheez to ek hi hai aapke paas. So we don't know what you are doing. This was the first question. The second question was, even if you are doing it, is the expertise to implement monetary policy within the RBI only? What the government believed was that RBI could be having a symptom of something called as groupthink. कि जो एक बंदे ने बोला बाकी सबने मान लिया. The group accepted whatever the leader was saying. So you might not be effective if you are just listening to the experts which belong to you. Therefore, you need experts from outside so that the expertise is mostly varied. All of this pointed to creation of MPC. Objective got clarified. What is the objective of monetary policy in India now? That you have to control inflation and maintain growth. Both of them are the objective. How are you going to do this? You are going to have a target on inflation index of CPI. What is the target and who will decide the target? The target will be decided by the government in consultation with the RBI. And this target will be decided for, what is the target? If you can't achieve this target, you will have to be responsible. And in order to have certain more expertise, we will constitute an MPC. MPC will have 3 members from, and 3 of the members will be experts nominated by the government for a period of 4 years. So a development happened because we wanted to make the monetary policy more participative, more accountable, more transparent with a clear objective. This was what the MPC goal was. It decides the benchmark interest rate. This is the function. I will control inflation only when I can decide the interest rate. It's a 12-member body including governor. It's a 6-member body. It functions under the chairmanship of Union Finance Minister. It can't, because finance minister is the government. You don't want government taking control of money. Again, you will have a problem. Why government control money will be a problem? Why RBI needs some sort of independence? Why we don't want government control over money supply? एक रीजन है कि इंडिपेंडेंस होनी चाहिए आरबीआई की गवर्नमेंट से. Why? One of the problems with the government is a mostly borrower in the economy. Expenditure hoga, they'll start printing more, they'll start borrowing more. Now, whenever inflation happens in the economy, who benefits? The one who takes the debt or the one who gives the debt? तो इनके पास तो इंसेंटिव है कि इन्फ्लेशन क्रिएट करो, because I will reduce the, but the moment I create inflation, will the people trust the money in my economy? This is why we want to give it to an independent body. We don't want government control, because government will always benefit from inflation, but people will lose trust in the currency. If you see any failed currencies, whether it is Argentina, any country, you will find that the government took control over the currency, people started losing trust. This is not correct. Conceptually भी सही नहीं हो सकता है. Otherwise, this should be prepared often in the news. Which of the following is the most likely measure the RBI takes to stop the slide of Indian rupee? What decides the value of Indian rupee? This is mostly not monetary policy, external sector, but still. What decides the value of rupee? The demand and supply of, this is what decides the value. How much, sorry, rupee is to $1. How much rupee will buy $1, right? Now what do we want to control is the slide. If we want to control the slide, that means we want to control the supply reduction, or we want to control the स्लाइड कब होगी वैल्यू? जब वो वैल्यू 50 to 70 जाए. 50 to 70 कब जाएगा? या तो सप्लाई कम होगा, then it is going to go up, or the demand increase हो. So I have to control demand increase and I have to control supply reduction. When the supply reduces, then only the value goes up, or the demand increases, then the value goes. I have to control this function. Curbing imports of non-essential goods and promoting exports. If I curb the imports, will the demand be reduced? If I reduce the import, will I demand more currency or demand less currency? Import के लिए what do I need? I need dollar. So if I reduce the import, will I reduce the demand of dollar? अगर import reduce करते हैं तो demand कम होगी बढ़ेगी? This is what we want. Question is asking. So you have to focus on the question also. It's asking, not do. This is something I will do. I will curb the demand, demand will be reduced. Encouraging Indian borrowers to issue rupee denominated masala bonds. If I issue rupee denominated bonds, what happens is, if any particular firm wants to borrow in rest of the world, right? If I want to buy from rest of the world, I will get the dollars. But if I issue a bond which is issued in rupees, then what will happen? I will not have to convert the dollar into rupee. Supply कम हो जाएगी, rupee बढ़ जाएगी. Again, this is I want to do. The question is asking, not. Easing conditions of external commercial borrowing. If I ease borrowing from outside, will I have more demand or I will have more supply? If I ease the conditions, it will impact demand or supply? Supply will. This is what I want if I want to control slide. Following an expansionary monetary policy. If I follow an expansionary monetary policy, rupee to dollar, if I follow expansionary monetary policy, that means more money in the economy. More rupee as compared to dollar will reduce the value of rupee or will increase the value? It will. So this is something I will not do. I have to stop the rupee from sliding. This will do the slide. This is something I will not do. Is it clear? It's mostly controlling demand and supply. So all of the three, just see what is happening to demand and supply of dollar with respect to rupee. Is it clear what it will not do? Whenever I borrow from outside, how will a firm borrow from outside? There's a particular bank outside which is going to give money. The firm will issue a bond and the bank will give the dollar. Who gets the currency risk here? अगर by chance movement ऊपर नीचे हुई, risk किसका है? Why? Because it has to convert the. I will have to give whatever the exchange rate is. But if I issue a bond which is denominated in rupees, that means this bank will now have to give me. This is called as a masala bond. A bond which is denominated in your currency is referred to as a masala bond. इससे फिर currency risk इनका है, इनका नहीं. This is a benefit to me. If the RBI decides to adopt an expansionist monetary policy, what is expansionist monetary policy? Reducing the interest rate. If I reduce the interest rate, there will be more money supply. More is what is we call as expansion, right? If I cut and optimize SLR, if I reduce the SLR, if the fraction of SLR goes down, will the bank be able to make more loans? If there are more loans, is it expansion of more money? Yes. Increase the MSF rate. What is MSF rate? The rate at which RBI gives loan to the bank. When it is done with the government security bachi nahi hai. So what the banks can do is they can use their SLR securities. If the RBI increases the bank rate, MSF rate, will the bank be able to give more or give less? Less. So this is expansionist or contractionary. So this is not correct. Cut the bank rate and repo rate. More money if bank rate and repo rate are increased. Now question is asking, if I adopt an expansionist monetary policy, I should do 1 and 3 and not do. Question is asking. So what should I do? 1, 3 but not do? Answer will be. Always read the question carefully. You'll always have these type of mistakes. Not do hamesha, not will be in bold or in italics. A very good question. They made it easy with elimination. If inflation is too high, RBI is likely to buy government security. What happens if RBI buys security? If the RBI will take the government security, it will have to give rupees. If there are more rupees in the economy, this will fuel inflation or control inflation. It will fuel inflation. That means if inflation is too high, RBI will buy or sell. This is incorrect. So if I eliminate one, I get the answer. But this option may not be available. We still solve 2 and 3. If rupee is rapidly depreciating, RBI is likely to sell dollars in the market. That means rupee is going from 50 to 70. अगर मुझे 50 से उसे 60 पे लाना है, what will I do? Will I bring in more dollars or take the dollars out? You will have to supply dollars. So this is correct. RBI is likely to sell dollars. अगर value of this is your demand curve and this is your supply curve. Supply got reduced. This is why it happened from 50 to 70. How do I bring it to 60? I will increase the supply. The RBI is likely to. If interest rates in US were to fall, it is likely to induce RBI to buy dollars. This was the most interesting statement here. If interest rates in US were falling, what will happen in Indian economy? Flight होगा. अगर interest rates बाहर कम है, people will bring more money to India or less money? Bring more money. That means there will be a more supply of dollars. If supply of dollar increases, what is the impact in the economy? What happens to exchange rate? Rupee depreciates, appreciates. That means it go from 50 to 30. Now, if there is significant appreciation in a small amount of time, is it beneficial for my economy? What is happening to my exports? If I'm making a shirt of 150 rupees, what is the price in first case in US? $3. What is the price in second case? More shirts will be sold here or here. That means appreciation is reducing my, right? Now, if this is done, exports are reduced, I should control the amount of supply that is coming. That means I should stop it at 40. How do I stop it at 40? The RBI will buy dollars. This is how I stop. इसका opposite हो रहा है. Rupee is appreciating, I'll not sell, I will buy. If I buy dollars, what is the implication? This is what happening were to fall. RBI is going to. Is it clear why it is going to buy dollars? RBI is going to buy dollars because I want to stop the appreciation. If I buy dollars, I am going to sell rupee. यही exchange होगा dollar के rupee. If I sell rupee, what is the impact on the economy? I will have more money supply increases. How do I control this? I will sell government security and buy rupee. More rupee was causing inflation, so I sold government security. This is the process of sterilization. UPSC asks this in the next year. If there is sterilization, what happens? Sterilization mein there is open market operation. Because buying dollars to control export fall, I had started selling rupees. Selling rupees caused inflation, selling government securities. Though they stopped at RBI buying dollars. Is it clear why they buy dollars? This relation. How? Exam hop में तो वैसे ही आसान हो गया ना, first statement eliminate हो गई. You will have to do that. It will be difficult, like it is not easy. What exam are you preparing for? मतलब बोल रहे थोड़ा मुश्किल हो रहा है, कोई ज़्यादा मुश्किल नहीं है. If the interest rate for it is likely to induce. The question itself is saying it is likely to induce. But this is what they should do, right? Go in this direction. Definitely it is not going to happen one by one usi time. But question is framed on what it is going to do. See, next year they ask this question: which of the following activities of the RBI is considered to be part of sterilization? Is it clear what is sterilization? Sterilization is remove the excess amount of dollars to control inflation. Conducting, is it clear? Next year itself, sterilization, open market operations. Question from the current affairs, though it is a basic question. In post-pandemic recent past, many central banks carried out interest rate hikes. Why did the banks carried out interest rate hikes? Because what happened in the pandemic? What is one thing that happened in pandemic throughout the world? There was a shortage of, if supply reduces, what happens to price? And if price rises, prices in the general rise, what do the central banks do? Right? Central banks generally assume they have the ability to counteract the rising consumer prices via monetary policy means. This is what the meaning is. Why had they done? So the question was not कि दोनों related हैं. Question is, did it happen or not? It was more a statement of fact. The government, but most of the economies saw a supply shortage. In fact, US ने 15 साल का interest rate increase का they had shifted to quantitative tightening. This is why I said it's a statement of fact. You are assuming this can happen, but I am asking what happened. This is why it's a statement of fact. Reading the newspaper is important. What is happening? You can't say कि वो कर रहे होंगे. कर तो ये रहे थे ना, वो कर सकते हैं. So this is not a question of concept. This is a question of fact. Both are correct, and 2 is the explanation of 1. Why these questions are asked? Again, basic macroeconomics, nothing very specific. Banking and banking regulations. Now, banking and banking regulations, the first two topics which we have discussed, growth, and the second was monetary policy. Both of these had questions which came from NCRT. NCRT or an applied thing from the NCRT, they were covered in the news. So it had a static part and it had a dynamic part, which was mostly building on the static part itself. So what we need is the NCRT and regular reading of the newspaper. But these banking regulations are completely newspaper driven. All of these terms which come related to banking or financial market is you have to be vigilant while reading the newspaper that you'll have to cover the terms. ये सिर्फ और सिर्फ, you can't have any particular source for solving this question that you'll read a book on banking regulations. You just have to continuously read 2 newspapers. Whatever term comes in the news with respect to banks and government or RBI regulation, you have to cover them extensively. This is why wide reading of the newspaper is required in this topic. Payment systems, banking, and financial markets. You don't have any source for preparation. Alone the newspaper is the source. You'll see from the questions itself. The term core banking solution is sometimes seen in the news. What is a core banking solution? Have you heard of this term? E-Kuber. Has anyone heard of this? In newspaper में ही है, बहुत covered. What is E-Kuber? RBI will Now, to manage all of its banking functions, whether with respect to government or with respect to banks, there is one software with RBI, the core banking solution, which is called as eKuber. Digitally, it tries to manage all of its banking functions of deposit, debt, or even withdrawals with the government or banks through its core banking solution eKuber. So, what is this eKuber? It is a network of RBI's branches which enables the RBI's customers to operate their accounts. So, कोई भी bank है, for example SBI, and SBI has number of branches. So, how are all of the functions of SBI coordinated with its branches? It is done through its core banking solution. The meaning of core banking solution is network of banks branches enables the customers to operate anywhere. और RBI का जो CBS है, that is called as eKuber. It is an effort to increase RBI control. It is a detailed procedure with huge non-performing asset. CBS is with all banks so that they can manage with the head office the branch offices. The answer here is one only. Again, completely newspaper driven question. You can't do it from any source. You need to understand eKuber core banking. You will find number of times coming in the newspaper. All of these questions are mostly if you have experienced it in daily life or not. जिसके लिए newspaper reading is important. Payment banks. In the year 2016, new banking development happened. What is the idea of payment banks? Anyone? Payment or small finance bank. A word of this? Airtel Payment Bank, Jio Payment Bank. What's the idea? We want the spread of banking habits. We want people to save, and we also want money multiplication. We want more loans from the banks. Now, how does the RBI do this financial inclusion, bring people into the banking habit? Is through the spread of universal banks. That means give bank licenses which can perform all functions and allow them to open new branches. Now, this is a highly cost and effort intensive exercise. I give a license to SBI, I give a license to private banks. This is a cost intensive exercise that they'll reach to the people. 2016, 2015, a committee was formed on financial inclusion called the Nachiket More Committee. What Nachiket More Committee said, move away from universal banks and do something called as differentiated banking. How do you differentiate the banks? Either differentiate on the functions they perform or differentiate on the target population they have. This is what they called as niche banking. There are three functions which a bank performs. What are the functions of a bank? What function does a bank perform in the economy? Bank can give out, then credit, saving. What else? इसके अलावा भी एक तीन बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट फंक्शन बैंक करता है. It gives credit, it helps in savings, mobilize savings. What else does a bank do? It also provides you solution for payment, check, draft, online banking, ATM cards. All of these are different payment systems which the bank gives you. These are the three building blocks of any bank. So what Nachiket More said, that either differentiate on banks or differentiate on target population. To differentiate on banks, they created something called as payment banks. ये सिर्फ दो ही function करेंगे. They will not do all functions. They will do the function of deposit and will provide the payment facility. That means they will not be doing loans नहीं है. That means risk नहीं है. Regulation कम हो जाएगी. Regulation कम होगी, financial inclusion better होगा. Second, have target oriented. They can do all three, but for certain focused people. This was called as small finance bank. How do they target the people? Any idea how small finance bank are different from universal banks? They have to give 75% of their loans to priority sector. तो मैंने target population के लिए बैंक बना दिया, and I've created a bank for payment purposes, that is financial inclusion. Small finance bank, a similar bank was already created before, but was created by the government, that was RRB. इनके पास भी limit है 75% they have to do priority sector lending. In fact, small finance bank have another condition. 50% of the loans should be less than 25 lakh rupees. So whatever total loans you give, 50% loans 25 lakhs से कम होने चाहिए. So I've targeted the population, priority sector, and I've given loans to people who are not getting loans from universal banks. So what they did, based on function, payment banks, based on target, small finance bank. This was created in the year 2015. Licenses started. Mobile telephone companies and supermarket chains are owned and controlled by residents, are eligible to be promoters of payment banks. Now see, what functions do payment banks do? They can take in deposits and give out payments. Who's more likely to give you payments? Who has digital solutions? Paytm Payment Bank, Jio Payment Bank, Airtel Payment Bank. Telephone companies. Payment banks can issue both credit card and debit cards. Now, credit card is type of a loan. Can payment banks give loans? Payment banks cannot undertake lending activities. This was the whole idea of payment banks. So answer here becomes 1 and 3. You have elimination also. If you know credit cards is a loan, you can eliminate 2 and all of the options are gone. Any new current development, payment bank and small finance bank license were distributed. You need to know the features of both. Is this clear? I want to spread these activities because I found out, Nachiket more found out, India has a problem that people move from state to state, but they don't know how to send the money back. Migrants move करते हैं, but migrants remittance करना नहीं जानते घर पे. So how do I bring them into the banking fold so they're not cheated by the people? I'll start distributing payment bank license. Now this is a low risk, low income opportunity. But payment banks, they gave an option that after successful 5 years of experience, you can transfer into a small finance bank. पैसा लोन से ही बनता है, but इसमें आपका रिस्क भी नहीं है, तो money making possibility is less. You can only charge for payment. Because how will I improve my efficiency of earning money? I will reduce my operations outside and I will make it digital so that I can make more money. It's just a payment service, not a loan. Licensed and it is a regulated activity. They can trust it because it is a regulated activity by the RBI. They will follow all of the regulations of the RBI. It's not that they're beyond the remit of RBI. But I am including those people who are being cheated by middlemen through various means. उन्हें बैंक चलाना नहीं आता, easy है payment bank का license. Indian Post has the largest network of this now. Indian Post Payment Bank. We wanted to ease the payment solutions for migrants. Number of regulation changes have been made. So initially they said only 1 lakh rupees is the deposit you can do. Now they've made it 2 lakh rupees. Which of the following statement best describes the term scheme for sustainable structuring of stressed asset? India had a problem of NPA. How do you solve the problem of NPA? RBI did a 4-pronged step to solve the NPA problem. The first step they did was, you need to recognize that there is a problem. Till a significant period of time, banks were not ready to recognize. Under recognition, they did something called as asset quality review. RBI checked the bank, every bank, what exactly the status of their asset is and classify them as bad loans if they are bad loans. Second, they created a central database for information on large credit. What was happening? One businessman had taken a loan from SBI. PNB did not know he had an exposure to SBI. So 5 crore से ज़्यादा जिसके भी लोन होंगे, सारी information यहाँ होगी. Central deposit database on information on large credit. This was recognition. The second step was resolution. Resolution means try to recover the loan. Try to take out value from the loan. The third step was give the banks money to do more business, recapitalization. And the fourth step was reform the process. Now under resolution, the RBI came out with number of steps, number of notifications. The first such scheme in 2015 was called as the Joint Lender Forum. This was one scheme for structuring. The second scheme for structuring in 2016 was called as Strategic Debt Restructuring. Understand, a very interesting thing happened here. Under Strategic Debt Restructuring, RBI said, whatever loans have been given by banks, and if you can't recover it from the firm, you convert the loan into shares. You control the whole firm now. So under strategic debt restructuring, RBI gave the power to the banks to convert their debt into equity. Now when this happened, this is a major problem for the firm. Unka control chala jayega. So a lot of firms started complaining. What they said, we can't return your loans not because we don't want to, because we had a problem. Not everyone is a willful defaulter. Some might face genuine difficulties. Now, those genuine difficulties, the RBI got to know that there are people with those problems also. For them, they took out a scheme called Scheme for Sustainable Structuring of Stressed Asset. This. What RBI said, those who are facing genuine difficulties, unka 50% of the debt will only be converted into equity, not all of debt. That means आप major stakeholder नहीं होगे, major stakeholder वो promoter ही होगा. Don't take away his control, convert only half of it. Because we think there are people with genuine difficulties. This was the step RBI took in 2017. This is what they asked in the next year. Procedure, yes. But we have to give the money back because you've taken substantial debt. All of these were for bigger lenders, bigger ones. Yes, definitely. This is why all of these three never got operational. Banks did not do this. In the next year, they cancelled everything. And then they asked them to go to IBC. Everything was cancelled the next year in June 2018. Considering ecological cost, reworking the financial structure of big corporate entities facing genuine difficulties. Is it clear? NPA and solution of NPA, direct question in the same year. S4A was a scheme for this. Otherwise, also, if you see disinvestment plan, insolvency, bankruptcy code, you can still connect. It's not related to any of this. It's related to financial sector. Scheme for sustainable structuring of stressed assets. You know, it is not ecological cost or it is not. You can eliminate options from relation of the terms. How only this or this makes sense. If you know that what was happening, B would be the answer. Is it clear what was S4A? Because what will they do with the deposits? How will they pay the interest on the deposits? Payments in my business scope is highly limited. Every payment I'm charging a very small fees. From where will I earn the deposit? In fact, RBI gave them a regulation, 75% of your money will be with SLR securities, and 25% you have to deposit in other banks for liquidity purposes. Payment, remittances, yeah. Along with remittances, I'm also giving you a deposit function. You don't want to transfer at one point, you want to keep a deposit with me. Like I can only give payment function, but out of the three, I gave two functions. Deposit is not substantial because how do I earn the interest on the deposit? It's very difficult for me to do that. This is why only small term deposits. If I am a migrant who's working at some place, I'm not sending everything at one place. I'm saving, micro savings. So I'm promoting both savings and I'm promoting payments. Both the things. I'm not taking the risk. How will you? Which money? Yes. So deposited will be credited in your account. That's you have ATM services of payment banks. It's not that you don't have ATM. Debit cards, ATMs are allowed. You don't have loan services. Loan and credit card is not there. ATM and that is allowed. Control. If you have a debt, I don't have a control over you. But if I own 50% of you, I have significant control. Or debt to equity 51 में तो मैं decide करूँगा सब कुछ. How will the company function? Because I have lost trust in you. This is what IBC does. What does IBC do? What happens in IBC? So if there's a question, I explain. IBC in detail, आपसे नहीं हो रहा, हम आपकी कंपनी किसी और को बेचेंगे. We will sell it for a price. That price will be taken by the bank. Various newspapers covered this as for a very important scheme. What is the purpose of setting up of small finance bank? I just explained small finance. What's the purpose? Supply credit to small business unit. How? Priority sector is 75 and 25 lakhs se kam hai 50% loans. Supply credit to small and marginal farmers. Encourage young entrepreneurs to set up business in rural areas. Yes. Why will I give a loan only if you set up a unit in that particular area? Can I have a locational guideline on you कि loan तभी दूंगा जब आप rural area में जाओगे? Can the bank have? क्यों? What was the purpose of small finance bank? To cover those who are not served, unserved or underserved, right? But they can start up a unit anywhere they want. Is there a specific purpose that if you start a unit, आप MSME लगाते हो तो सिर्फ आप रूरल एरियाज में लगाओगे तभी पैसे मिलेंगे? You see how statements are related, but third statement does not make sense. Why will I encourage young entrepreneurs to set up in particular rural areas? It's their business decision to decide wherever they want to set up the plant. If he is a small business unit, he'll take a loan from me, irrespective of where he sets up the unit. This has absolutely no linkage here, though it seems that they all three are connected. This is why always read the question carefully. Answer here is 1 and why will I have a locational guideline? मेरे ऊपर हो सकती है कि आरबीआई ने बोला है यहाँ ब्रांच नहीं खोलनी, बट उनके ऊपर थोड़ी कुछ है कि वहाँ पे ऑफिस नहीं खोलना है. So why would I encourage them to open in rural areas if there's no business? If there's business in urban areas, go open there. 3 is not correct. Only 1 and 2. Is it clear? Read the question carefully. This was a very good question. Capital adequacy ratio is the amount that banks have to maintain in the form of their own funds to offset loss that banks incur if account holders fail to repay dues. One of the things which we discussed in banking system was that bank gets a deposit, and from the deposit the bank has to make a loan. That means there's a risk involved. What if the loan does not come back? How will the depositor get the money? If the loan does not come back and a significant loans do not come back, will the depositors lose trust? If the depositors lose trust, every depositor is going to run to the bank and take their money. And if too many depositors come, will the bank fail? That means a very small activity of few loans defaulting, the bank has a very big possibility of failure. Now, how do I prevent this failure? In order to prevent the failure, this depositor will have trust on the bank if I know that bank has enough amount of capital to cover for this. If I know bank has enough safe money that it will be able to tide over the loss, this becomes a benefit for the depositor. In order to have guidelines that this capital should be maintained by the bank, there were certain set of guidelines given by the Basel Committee on Banking Supervision, which were called as Basel Accords. There's a Bureau of International Standards where you have central banks all over the world having this banking committee in order to find out how to maintain depositor trust in the banking system throughout. Because this problem is faced by bankings all over the world. So they wanted to figure out how to create more trust in the banking system. Central banks, under the aegis of Bureau of International Settlement, formed a Basel Committee on Banking Supervision. They gave certain guidelines, which guidelines are called as Basel Accord. The most important guideline of all Basel Accord was that every bank should maintain some sort of capital. Now, how much capital they should maintain, I need to give a guideline. In order to give this guideline on capital, they introduced something called as a capital adequacy ratio. That every bank has to maintain some capital as a percentage of their risk-weighted asset. Now, what do you mean by asset of a bank? Loans. हर लोन में एक रिस्क हो सकता है. Some loans are more risky as compared to others. So whatever the price of the loan is, I multiply with the risk weightage. As a percentage of that, I need some capital. For example, Basel norm said you need to maintain 8% of risk-weighted asset is something you should always have. Because this capital is going to prevent this. Capital is going to build trust. Whatever baseline or the Basel guidelines were, central banks are free to adopt them or modify them. There's no legal compulsion. RBI has accepted all of the Basel guidelines and has norms for capital adequacy ratio. So what is capital adequacy ratio? Amount the banks have to maintain in the form of their own funds to offset any loss when repayment doesn't happen. So this is a trust which you are creating with the depositors, which RBI has asked you to do. Basel said 8%, RBI said 9%. Every bank has this capital adequacy norms. It is decided by each individual bank. It is decided by minimum RBI decide करता है, बाकी आप कितना भी रख सकते हो. So every bank has to maintain a minimum of 9%. If some bank is maintaining 15% and another bank is maintaining 25%, where will the depositor have more trust? Someone who has 9, 15 or 25? 25. So this becomes a information for the client to choose which bank they want to do business with. ये बैंक सबसे safe है क्योंकि इनके पास पैसा बहुत है to cover for their loss. Minimum everyone has to maintain, that is 9%. This is what is the genesis of capital adequacy ratio. Answer here is it clear? This is basic of banking. Minimum, yes. But basics they have to write. I can't keep it at 7. How am I deciding then? Definitely can happen. If I keep more safe money, that means I'm not using it. Definitely. All of this reduces the bank's profit making capacity. Profit should not come at, there should be some sort of risk management because you're dealing with people's money. This is why regulations of RBI. This was related to the third step. I told you there were 4 steps to deal with NPA. What was the first step? The first step was recognition. The second step was the asset recovery or something called as resolution. What is the third step? Why should the bank be recapitalized? What do you mean by recapitalization? Who's the owner? Where did the NPA problem happen? NPA problem was mostly with government banks. Government banks का owner कौन है? As the name suggests, the government, right? Now, whenever a bank faces losses, that means it has given a loan, this has not returned. How will I cover for the loss? How do the banks earn money? Banks earn money as a difference between the two, right? I will only recover the loss when I can make more loans. How will I make more loans? I need more money from my owner. This is what is called as recapitalization. Government decided to recapitalize the bank so that they can do more business and then recover their loss, because there's no other way of recovering the loss other than providing them more money. This is what was the third step in order to do that. 3.5 lakh crore rupees is what the government gave them in a period of 4 years, roughly, coming from both the budget and bonds. 3.5 lakh crore rupees. This is the first statement they've asked. Capital infusion into public sector banks has steadily increased in the last decade. Question is in 2018, that means 8 to 18, I have steadily increased. Now, will a government keep on giving money to its banks? There is a logic that it increased definitely, but would it be a steady increase? Why will I not keep on increasing the money given to the banks? You understand the logic, then we'll come to how to solve. Fact hai to you can definitely solve. This cannot happen. Even from concept, this cannot happen. Recapitalization says give more money to them so that they can make loans. What is the guarantee they'll not repeat this mistake? So I'll be very careful with them in giving money. So some years when I think they had problem, I'll give them more money. But there will be years I'll not give them more money because I don't have a guarantee that they'll not make the same mistake again. So if there is a problem here in giving more money, will the money given by the bank to the bank steady increase? Secondly, even to give this money, from where will the government get the money? All is a problem. अगर मैं tax लोगों पे बढ़ाऊं तो और बड़ी problem. If I increase the tax, people will not spend, people will not borrow, banking activity reduces. So from where will the government find the money to steadily increase it every year? Both become conceptually a problem. I am giving them more money and I cannot punish their bad behavior. So whatever they do, I keep on giving them money. This is irresponsible behavior being punished or being incentivized. This process is called as a moral hazard. This phenomena when you can't discipline bad behavior, you're giving them money, still they're making mistakes. This is called as moral hazard. So from the perspective of moral hazard, I can't do this. So this is why this is not correct. To put the public banks in order, the merger of associate banks with parent state of Bank India has been effected. This was the reform step. We merged some of the SBI associates with the main SBI bank. This is true. Answer is it clear how you can solve first even if you don't know the fact? The government cannot continuously give money because the government does not have the resource to do so, and also the incentive not to do so because of moral hazard. Answer here is 2 only. Otherwise also this was covered in the news, the patterns of recapitalization. This is been coming from the news only, the pattern of losses and how the government gave the money to them. Restructuring of assets. What was the purpose of intercreditor agreement? So I told you 15 to 20 सारे question NPA पे हैं. The 4 steps of NPA only. Restructuring of assets. What is the purpose of intercreditor agreement? The second step of solving the NPA problem was resolution. Now one of the government committees also proposed how to do resolution. Now what they proposed was a committee under the ex PNB chairman Sunil Mehta. He proposed something called as Project Sashakt. Now what he proposed under this, he proposed 5 things. He said, if the loan is less than 5 crore, the bank alone should solve it and establish a vertical for solving NPAs. If there's a small ticket loan less than 5 crore, bank alone should do that. But if the bank loan is more than 5 crores and up to 50 crores, then you need a consortium of banks. Where? Because एक bank का exposure नहीं होगा जब 50 crore है. So there will be multiple banks and all of the banks should come under an agreement called intercreditor agreement and then try to solve the loan. If it is 50 crores to 2000 crores, it should be solved through IBC. Insolvency bankruptcy code में जाओगे आप. And finally you will have an alternate investment fund. This was for asset reconstruction companies and a trading platform. He proposed these 5 steps to solve it. This is where the intercreditor agreement came in the news because it was related to resolution of bad loans. Lessens the government burden on fiscal deficit to support infrastructure projects, to act as independent regulator in applications of it was 50 crores or more, 50 to 500. Ye less than 50 tha. Faster resolutions of 50 crore or more which are under consortium. D is correct. Also, if you make from the statement itself, purpose of intercreditor agreement signed by Indian banks and financial institutions, right? Indian banks and financial institutions, why will they involve themselves in fiscal deficit? They have nothing to do with fiscal deficit. Second, they have nothing to do with infrastructure projects. ये दोनों agreement sign करेंगे to solve the problem of bad loans. If you want to solve it without knowing Project Sashakt, the statements don't make a lot of sense. Is it clear? Again, a problem related to NPA. All of this happened till 2020. A lot of new terms, new regulations. Chairman of public sector banks are selected by, again the news. The 4th step for solution of bank NPA problem was reform. Under reform, the government launched something called as a Indradhanush plan. In fact, reform ke liye, the government set up a committee called Banking Sector Reforms by P.J. Nayak. He was the chairman. This was the committee to recommend reforms. What he said was the biggest problem of government banking was there's a lot of interference of the government with the public sector banks. They appoint everyone, their tenure, plus all of the phone calls that come from the government. We need to reduce this interference. How do we reduce this interference? They said the government should create a bank investment company. और ये बैंक इन्वेस्टमेंट कंपनी ही सारे पब्लिक सेक्टर बैंक्स को मैनेज करेगी. They said create a bank holding company, shift all of your shares here, let them manage everything. In order to incentivize them to better manage, give them incentives based on equity. आप shares दो इनको, इन्हीं banks के, ये better perform करेंगे, इनको भी benefit मिलेगा. So this was a professional arrangement which they wanted to create to reduce the role of the government. They said, till the time you create this, create a bank board bureau which will manage appointment. Till the time you create a bank holding company, you create a board which is going to select the top officials so that the interference reduces. The government did not accept this, but accepted this. UPSC in the same year asked this question. The chairman of public sector banks are selected by bureau. Current developments in banking financial sector are always probable questions in UPSC. The 4 steps, every step was asked in all of the years. 15 to 20 you'll find maximum questions on banking. Now this is a very interesting question. The service area approach is a scheme of 1980s. And it is related to a scheme which was introduced in 1969. Now, why UPSC has asked this? Because one of the things that UPSC has always covered in both in prelims and mains exam is the topic of financial inclusion. This is a topic they've covered through multiple dimensions, both in prelims and mains. Okay, how does the RBI or the government manage to bring people under the banking fold? Because there's a lot of problem with informal money lenders. How do we reduce the problem? Now, how did the financial inclusion problem was solved in the initial days? The biggest problem the Indian banking system faced was that agriculture and MSME never got loans, and there were hardly any branches in the rural areas. Now, how did the RBI manage or the government manage this problem before nationalization? Nationalization also was done to affect these two problems. 1969, the government had a scheme called the lead bank scheme. And 1974, they created another thing which was called as priority sector lending. Under the lead bank scheme, the government said, we are going to give responsibility to every bank to be the lead bank in a particular district and manage all of the banking there. For example, SBI has a responsibility of say 10 districts. उस particular district में financial inclusion सब आप करोगे. कहाँ new bank branches चाहिए, where we can give more licenses, everything will be managed by the lead bank. Now, problem with this scheme was that though this lead bank was given the responsibility, it was being concentrated only in few areas. Every district might have some developed areas, urban areas, so it might be focused there. In order to make this scheme more specific, the RBI said, now every district will be distributed into specific service area. And every bank will be given the responsibility of one service area having say 15 to 20 villages. So that we have a focused approach on spreading banking in the rural areas. Lead bank was being skewed in some areas. So every lead bank will determine the service area of a bank और वो उसी area में काम करेगा. This is what was your service area approach under the lead bank scheme. Now this question, though the scheme, you can't prepare everything. But what topic needs to be prepared, which is covered holistically by UPSC, is financial inclusion. We'll find number of questions that are on priority sector lending, which is a scheme of 1974. Modifications are made, but still it is often asked in the exam. Last year there was also a question, we'll discuss this. MSME loans are PSL loans or not? So this topic of financial inclusion, one is spread of credit and the other is spread of complete banking. These two schemes become highly important. Financial inclusion, any measure being taken has a probability of being asked. Which of the following is not included in the assets of a commercial bank? I told you macroeconomics is the base for preparation. वहाँ से start होगा सब. Bank, what is an asset of a bank? Not loans. What is the meaning of an asset? You go with the basic meanings, don't learn anything. What is the asset? Which gives a future, and liability is something which you owe, right? If you give a loan to someone, will you have a gain or you have to give the money back? Gain, so this is an asset. Deposit, it's not an asset. Go with the meaning, don't remember anything. Deposit is something which you owe, and this is not a asset. Third is investment. Investment is a gain or something you owe. Investment gives me benefit, so I can use it for loan, I can invest it somewhere. Money at call and short notice. What is call and short notice money? Money and call and short notice is interbank borrowing. So when you give a loan, that is your asset. Interbank borrowing for 1 day, borrowing for 1 to 14 days. This is a money market instrument where only banks participate. This is a telephonic market where you can give bank money to other banks only through a telephone exchange. This is money and call and short notice, which is a asset because you've given a loan to someone. Even this is a money loan given. Money at call notice is a loan given always. Or wo bhi na jo deposit, this is very, you don't have to go. Money borrowed would be specified. This is a money given loan, and this is where it was shown. The NCRT. Macro NCRT, everything will be covered. A very good question. This came from news. Economic survey covered this, and the chief economic advisor this time talked about this term multiple times. Everywhere we had the problem of NPA. So what the chief economic advisor found out was NPA means a loan which is not coming back. That means I have a problem with the firm, which is creating a problem for the bank. He called this as the twin balance sheet problem. Now, what interesting thing he found out was that whatever firms are not able to return the money to the banks, they do not have any earning capacity. That means most of these firms are failed firms. A lot of times bad loans can be because of bad business conditions. It could be external environment is not favorable. But what he found was most of the companies were what he called as IC1 companies. That means their interest coverage was less than 1. Less than 1 means the total earnings which their company has and whatever interest they have to pay is less than 1. This is what he found out, and he made this term popular, IC1 companies. That India mein sari companies jinka NPS hai, most of them are IC1 companies where earnings are less than the interest. The interest wo denge kahan se? This is where he said that this is a very big twin balance sheet problem because most of the companies which have this exposure are IC1 companies. UPSC framed a question on what is interest coverage. IC1 became very famous. If you understand IC1, you don't remember the formula interest earnings. IC1 means earnings are less than interest. It helps in understanding the present risk of a firm that a bank is going to give a loan to. If I know interest coverage, I know what their present coverage is. It also helps the emerging risk. Earnings से मुझे emerging risk भी तो पता चल रहा है आगे क्या होगा इनके साथ. So both the present and the emerging risk I can know. Present risk, why? Because presently I know their interest which they pay. Emerging risk because I know their earning. Earning to interest ratio here I see. From interest I come to know their present risk. From earnings I come to know their emerging risk. So for example, in a particular firm, I know interest they have to pay is only 10 rupees, but they earn 100. So I know interest payment is only 10, earning is 100. That means the present risk is less. And I know earning is 100, that means their emerging risk is also less. So both the things I came to know from interest coverage ratio. Higher the firm's level of interest coverage ratio, worse is its ability to service the debt. Agar ratio badi hai, is it worse or it is good? If the ratio is 8, is it good or bad? Earnings into interest is 8. Is it good or bad? IC1 हमने क्यों बोला उन्हें? क्योंकि जितनी रेशो कम है उतना खराब है. That means earnings are less than interest. But if it is more, that means its ability to service the debt is better. That means this statement is, answer is. So if you see from banking regulations, most of them are newspaper questions. Most of them because NPA problem was in the news from 15 to 20. This was a highly popular term, interest coverage ratio.
Completing the syllabus without proper knowledge of current affairs will not take you far in the UPSC Civil Services examination. Regulate and transform your preparation with complete coverage of news of relevance. Get a concrete hold of current affairs for UPSC CSE with Vision IS Monthly Current Affairs Revision Program starting from 20th September at 5 p.m. The program is your guide to get comprehensive news on one platform sourced through relevant resources such as The Hindu, Indian Express, Economic Times, PIB, Yojana, and others. Enroll for complete coverage of current affairs including Indian polity and constitution, economy, international relations, and more. Comprehensive assessment of preparation through MCQs and mains-oriented questions. Expert support through personalized mentoring and online doubt resolution.
This became a very big issue. This became an issue in 2015 to 17 because there was a very big conflict between the government and the RBI. One of the reasons why government should be or RBI should be independent from RBI or government is clear. Why? Because we don't want government control over money. Another point of conflict between them is the interest rate. Now, what's the function of RBI? Control inflation. And in order to control inflation, what will I do? I will increase the interest rate. If the interest rate is high, will the government be happy about it? Why? Because consumption and investment will not increase. Secondly, RBI also has control over the banks. And if some banks are not performing well, we have a supervisory guidelines on them, which is called as prompt corrective action. ये discipline है on the banks if they falter. RBI placed a number of public sector banks under PCA. That means these public sector banks cannot give out, and high interest rate is also not good for them. So there became a conflict between RBI and the government, and this conflict came out in public because the finance minister Arun Jaitley did not want the higher interest rate or did not want this, whereas the governor complained agar ye nahi karenge to broader macroeconomic fundamentals will go bad, and this is where he had to resign and a new one came in. Now this whole process, how is the RBI governor appointed? It is appointed by the central government. RBI Act 1934 is what governs all of these provisions. A central government act, and all the more why the RBI will appoint it. Who owns the RBI? How? Or when did this happen? 1949, there was a RBI Nationalization Act where the complete control of RBI was given to the government. So 100% owner, the RBI Act passed by the parliament. The central government is the one which will appoint. Certain provisions in constitution give the central government right to issue directions to the RBI in public interest. This was the major point that came out in public. Do we have provisions in the constitution with respect to RBI? Hota to this Lakshmikant would have been 30 pages more. You would have read it. Lakshmikant to sari information hai wahan pe. It's not at all related to the constitution. In fact, this came in the news. This is what the relevance was. RBI Act 1934 has a section 7 here. Section 7 says, and this has never been used, but definitely government gave a threat here. Section 7 says the central government can give certain guidelines to RBI which they have to comply because of public interest. This would mean that there will be a dilution of independence of RBI if the government gives those guidelines. This is what was the reason of this. Deputy Governor of RBI that time, there are 4 Deputy Governors. Viral Acharya gave a speech outside the RBI and he said that if Section 7 gets used or anything happens, the macroeconomic fundamentals of this country will go. Currency, people might lose trust in the currency. Because he thought that there was pressure from the government. Under Section 7, there might be guidelines. And then in fact, after a few days, both the governor and the deputy governor had resigned. So there was a lot of conflict over this. This is what is why the question came in. Because reform process mein kafi dono were not on the same page. Governor of RBI draws his power from RBI. This is true. Is this clear? Again, all of this has relevance in the news. This is not coming out of the blue that you need to prepare everything for RBI or prepare everything of banking. Answer here is 1 and 3. Urban cooperative banks. No, nothing. Section 7 के under they can print guidelines, otherwise they can't. With reference to urban cooperative banks, consider the following statement. What's the meaning of cooperative banks? All of the relevance of urban cooperative banks came in because we have a very big failure in the Punjab Maharashtra Cooperative Bank. A lot of depositors thought that they're going to lose money. This bank is going to fail. After which, the government amended the Banking Regulation Act 2020. This act was amended, which gave more powers to RBI over urban cooperative banks. This is why in 2021 this question came in. The features of this amendment act were important. They are supervised and regulated by local boards set up by the state government. Urban cooperative banks have dual regulation both by RBI and the state governments. And it's not a local board, it's the state registrar which registers these banks under the Society Registration Act. Since these are formed on cooperative basis, they are regulated both by RBI and state government. Banking functions RBI dekhta hai, management functions state government dekhta hai. Under this act, more control of banking functions was given to the RBI without diluting the state government's role. So both of them have control, which is a problem in their functioning. But management functions state government through state registrar and the banking functions through RBI. It's not a local board. They can issue equity shares and preference shares. This was one of the amendment under 2020, that they could issue both equity shares and preference shares. They were brought under the purview of banking regulation through an amendment in 1966. This is how they came in. 1966 onwards only RBI started regulating them. Another change happened in 20. Before that, they were not regulated by the RBI. Right now, they are regulated both by RBI and state government. If you read about urban cooperative banks and you say the Banking Regulation Act 2020 amendment has come in, the first thing was, when exactly was the urban cooperative banks brought under banking regulation? This was covered everywhere. A very important news. In fact, they asked 2-3 more questions on urban cooperative banks. In India, the central banks function as the lender of last resort, usually refers to which of the following? This is basic. RBI acts as a banker to the bank. In any case, we are not letting you fail. We have to keep the depositors' money safe. Providing liquidity to banks having a temporary crisis. It is not for the government, it is not for industry. It is only for banks. Lender of the last resort function is only for the banks. Answer is 2 only. The most basic function of RBI. Another question with respect to Bank Board Bureau. The governor of RBI is the chairman of Bank Board Bureau. Why did we set up Bank Board Bureau? Appointment of senior officials. Why would the RBI involved in appointment? RBI may approve the appointment, but directly they will not be involved. There were 3 independent experts which the government brought in. It recommends the selection of heads of public sector banks. 1 is incorrect, 2 is correct. It helps the public sector banks in developing strategies and capital raising plans. What was the function of bank holding company? To help have professionalism and also recommend certain plans to them. Both of them are true. In fact, what is the latest development in this field is this Bank Board Bureau has now been termed as, there was a case against Bank Board Bureau because they are also involved in appointment of the insurance officials, public sector banks and public financial institutions both. It had a problem in the Delhi High Court and now it has been replaced by a Financial Services Institutions Bureau. This FSIB is the new body which is doing both these functions, and it is doing both for public sector banks and public financial institutions. This is the new body which has been set up for this. You can have questions on this now. No, it has been abolished, it has been transferred. Usi ka chairman ko yahi chairman bana diya. It's almost the same. There was a legal problem that how could they do this? So they made certain changes in the Bank Nationalization Act and created the new body. There was a legal loophole in the creation of Bank Board Bureau. Financial Services Investment Bureau. Again, this is covered, again, news, syndicated lending. Syndicated lending spreads the risk of borrower default across multiple lenders. So if you have to take a loan which is of huge figure, 500 crores or more, you can take it from multiple banks. This is what is called as syndicated lending. Spreads the risk. So if I'm taking loan from number of borrowers, the risk is spread. Syndicated loan can be a fixed amount but cannot be a credit line. What do you understand by credit line? you don't have an exact number what you want to borrow, but you have the maximum limit which you can. So आप time to time आप वो loan ले सकते हो. So if I have credit line of 2 crore rupees, so that means I can take loans of 50 lakh, then 50 lakh more, up to 2 crore I can take a loan. So if I'm taking a big loan, risk spread, but I can take it both as a fixed amount and as a credit line. This feature is incorrect. Answer is only one statement. Statement 1 is correct. Answer is C here. This is a slightly difficult question because you might get number of features of syndicated lending, but you would not get it between fixed amount and credit line. So you'll have to innovate here कि whether this will happen or not. So you'll have to go with guesswork कि ये हो सकता है कि नहीं हो सकता. Otherwise, this is a difficult question, very difficult to prepare for. Consider the following statements. In India, NBFCs can access the liquidity adjustment facility of Reserve Bank of India. What is an NBFC? What is a non-banking financial company? Core banking functions is what? The biggest difference between bank and NBFC is that NBFCs performs financial functions. That is, they can help you invest money. They can help you provide a loan, but they do not accept demand deposit. Now, why this is critical? Demand deposit requires a certain level of trust. कि उन्हें demand पे पैसे वापस देने हैं. This is why these financial functions, the regulation is lesser as compared to what regulation happens on banks. Now, why does the RBI give facility of lender or liquidity adjustment facility to banks? Liquidity adjustment facility includes repo, reverse repo or standing deposit facility and MSF. These three are liquidity adjustment. Why does the RBI give this to banks? So that whenever they have a problem of temporary liquidity, that means problem of this. But if NBFCs are not allowed to accept demand deposit, will they be given LAF? LAF का function यही है कि उन्हें help करनी है जब demand deposit की ज़्यादा problem हो. NBFCs cannot access this. In India, foreign institutional investors can hold government securities. Stock exchanges can offer separate trading platform for debts. This is general, both of the statements are true. But is it clear how NBFCs are different and why LAF is not given? In fact, I told you about deposit insurance. NBFCs also do not have deposit insurance. There's no deposit insurance facility to them. Another, there's a payment and settlement systems in the country. NBFCs are not part of this payment and settlement. We'll discuss this when we discuss the payment system. Both of them are not available to NBFCs. No LAF, no deposit insurance, no payment and settlement system. And one more thing. How are banks regulated by RBI? Under what act? Banking Regulation Act. Banks, RBI also regulates some of the NBFCs under RBI Act 1934. It's not covered under Banking Regulation Act. It is covered under RBI Act 1934. Basic on banking's foreign bank rules. There's no minimum capital requirement for wholly owned banking subsidiaries in India. Do you think there is a minimum capital requirement for any bank that exists in India? Minimum capital means the starting amount with which you are coming in. And we discussed how banking में the capital becomes all the more important because it covers for the losses you have. So do you think this would be true for a foreign bank? If you see this does not make sense, you will have capital requirement. Or how can you function without a minimum capital requirement? Secondly, for wholly owned banking subsidiaries in India, at least 50% of the board members should be Indian nationals. This was a tricky statement. This is true. RBI has a regulation on foreign banking which says 50% of the board members should be Indian nationals. This is a difficult question where you need to know certain more basics about banking. Banking financial markets have to be prepared well. This was, second is true, one does not make any sense. Payment ecosystem. Rest of the questions we'll discuss in the next class.